the death warrant of Social Security, and how, frankly, I believe, and I base this not just on common sense, but also on having seen this movie before, and I'm guessing many of you have as well, if you were paying attention. We saw this during the Reagan administration, we saw it during the Bush administration, we saw it during the first Trump administration, although not quite so much. I mean, he really didn't have any idea what he was doing. He didn't expect to win the presidency. He surrounded himself with some fairly rational people, at least for the first 3 years. And but now, the gloves are off. Now, Trump is trying to go full Orban or full Putin, and of course, full whatever the billionaires want, the billionaires get. And the main thing that the billionaires want is to not have to pay income taxes on Social Security or for Social Security. Right now, if you make over $170,100, I believe, maybe it's $176,000. $176,100. If you make more than that, which, Elon Musk does like in the first 3 minutes of January 1st, Jeff Bezos does maybe in the first 4 minutes of January 1st. I don't know the actual minutes, but you understand what I'm saying. You pay Social Security tax on that first $176,000, but then after that, you don't pay anything. You can make all the money you want, and you don't pay a penny into the Social Security Trust Fund. And if Social Security was to remain solvent for the next 75 years, and that's as far out as the actuaries do it. I mean, that, functionally means forever. If Social Security is to remain solvent for the next 75 years, and if all Americans were to get a substantial Social Security raise, Bernie Sanders has a proposal for everybody to get $2,500 a year as a raise for, of their Social Security income, which wouldn't quite take us back to where Social Security was compared to cost of living back in 1986 when Ronald Reagan, quote, reformed Social Security and began this slow slide where Social Security does not grow as fast as inflation. But anyhow, if billionaires, if we wanted to have Social Security be completely solvent forever, all we have to do is say to the multimillionaires, the millionaires, and the billionaires, y'all have to pay your Social Security taxes on every penny of income you take. I mean, you have to pay income taxes on every penny. Well, unless you're a billionaire, of course. Billionaires in America pay an average of around 4% income taxes. Nice work if you can get it, right? I mean, holy cow. We have a friend who's a surgeon, and he added up all of his income taxes, state, federal, city, everything else, and he's like, I'm paying something like 46% income taxes. I'm like, that's because you only make, $600,000-$700,000 a year. The guy, like I said, he's a abdominal surgeon. I forget what they're called. And, but if you made $1 billion a year, you could only pay 4%. Or maybe if you made $10 million a year. I mean, there's some threshold there where when you start getting just fabulously rich, you stop paying income taxes. And so, bus drivers pay more income taxes than do billionaires. So, anyhow, here's the bottom line. The billionaires don't want Social Security to tax them. That's number one. There's basically a couple of reasons why billionaires hate Social Security. That's number one. They don't want to pay, they just hate paying income taxes. They think it's unfair. It's my money, I earned it, right? Number two, the billionaires who hate government and want to basically do away with it. I mean, the poster boy for this, of course, is Elon Musk with Doge. Those billionaires hate Social Security because Social Security has been going since 1935, never missed a payment, and it proves the government can actually work. Well, if they're going to prevail with their argument that it's time to end, regulation and deregulate, do away with the EPA and do away with, public education and kill the education, they've got to convince average Americans that the government sucks, that the government is evil and dysfunctional and screwed up. And, good luck with that when Social Security is proof that the government works. So how is Donald Trump, or how are Donald Trump and Elon Musk going to destroy Social Security? Well, the first thing you have to do is turn Americans against the program. Once you've got, public sentiment on your side, then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So how do you turn Americans against Social Security? You make it not work. They just laid off 7,000 employees at the Social Security Administration. Now, relative to both in absolute numbers and relative to the amount of claims that they process, Social Security is at the lowest level of staffing that it has been at in 50 years. Big revolution. Because every Republican who comes in cuts the Social Security Administration staff. Why? For this same reason. They want to make it so that when you call Social Security, you're on hold for 3 hours. They want to make it so if you try to make an appointment with Social Security, you have to wait 6 months. They want to make it so when you show up for your appointment, you have to wait all day. They want to make it so that Social Security is a hellscape. So the Social Security, interacting with Social Security, if you have a problem, if you want to get Social Security disability, that it takes years, they just want to make it as horrible as possible. And that's why, last week they laid off 7,000 Social Security workers. And then, Musk essentially announced that an additional 30,000, half the workforce, may be on the chopping block. So get ready. Get ready. This is how you destroy Social Security. And this is what these guys are all about. They hate Social Security. They want to see it go away. They don't want to pay their damn taxes. And they don't want Americans to think the government can work because, hey, they don't need government. They've got, private jets that fly out of private airports. You saw Musk is taking a meat axe now to the TSA. Oh, God. And of course, the FAA. So anyhow, get ready. All right, is Trump really going to invade Canada and Greenland? Stick around. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Cokeland, The Secret History of Coke Industries and Corporate Power in America by Christopher Leonard. This is from the preface. On May 18th, 1981, 4 Wall Street bankers traveled to Wichita, Kansas. They went there to make an offer to Charles Koch, the CEO of an obscure mid-size energy company. The bankers from Morgan Stanley wanted to convince Koch to take his family's company public, offering shares for sale on the New York Stock Exchange. Their deal was squarely in line with the conventional wisdom of corporate America at the time. Going public was seen as a natural progression for companies like Koch Industries, offering them access to big pools of money and promising enormous paydays for the existing team of executives. All it required from the CEO was to surrender control. Morgan Stanley, in return, would collect a small fortune in fees. Charles Koch was 45 years old. He had run Koch Industries since he was 32 when his father died suddenly. He was trim, tall, and had an athlete's build. He spoke quietly in meetings and seemed almost passive. The bankers laid out their plan to take Koch public. They revealed what, to most executives at least, might have been the most significant detail. If Charles Koch agreed to the deal, he could earn $20 million overnight. The bankers seemed incredulous when they prepared a confidential memo about Koch's reaction. He does not want this cash, the memo reported. Charles Koch calmly explained to them why their offer made no sense. His company was breathtakingly profitable. It operated in vital, deeply complex corners of the American energy industry. During the 1980s, Koch Industries was the largest purchaser and transporter of U.S. crude oil. It owned an oil refinery. It employed teams of commodity traders who bought and sold a wildly diverse menu of raw materials and financial products, from gasoline to paper futures contracts. This might have encouraged most CEOs to take their company public. Koch Industries, however, did not want outsiders to know how much money its traders were earning. Taking the company public would expose too many of its secrets. The memo said, certain of Koch's commodity traders are particularly worried that their high salaries, once disclosed to the public, would be used against them by their trading partners. Secrecy was a strategic necessity for Koch Industries. Charles Koch did not want to surrender it. He also didn't want to surrender control. He had a specific, clear vision of how to run his company, and he didn't need Wall Street investors to interfere. If the bankers expected Charles Koch to go along with the conventional wisdom of their time, then they, like so many outsiders, did not understand him. Beneath his low-key veneer, Charles Koch was, at his core, a fighter. He had unmovable ideas about how things should be, and he did not back down when challenged. When he was challenged by his own brothers for control of Koch Industries, he fought them in a bitter legal battle that lasted decades. When he was challenged by members of a powerful labor union during his first years as CEO, he fought them even as they committed an act of industrial sabotage that nearly destroyed Koch's oil refinery. When the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice launched a criminal investigation into Koch Industries' oil gathering business, Charles Koch fought them with every legal and political tool at his disposal. When a liberal Congress and President Barack Obama sought to impose regulations on the fossil fuel industry to control greenhouse gas emissions, Charles Koch fought them in ways that changed U.S. politics. In each of these fights, Charles Koch prevailed. When Charles Koch dismissed the bankers in 1981, it was just a small skirmish in the larger war to control Koch Industries. After prevailing in that fight, he created a company that was true to his vision. He avoided the snares that entangled many publicly traded companies that report their financial results to investors every 3 months. Koch Industries didn't have to think quarter to quarter. The company thinks year to year. An internal think tank and deal-making committee called the Development Group will sometimes think through a business deal on a timeline measured in decades. This long-term view made Koch more nimble where other companies stumbled. In 2003, for example, Koch Industries bought a group of money-losing fertilizer plants when no publicly traded company was willing to take the risk. Today, those plants are as profitable as a broken ATM machine that spews out cash around the clock. Unlike publicly traded companies, Koch Industries does not pay out rich dividends to investors. Charles Koch insists on reinvesting at least 90% of the company's profits, fueling its constant expansion. This strategy laid the foundation for decades of continuous growth. Koch Industries expanded continuously by purchasing other companies and branching out into new industries. It specialized in the kind of businesses that are indispensable to modern civilization, but which most consumers never directly encounter. The company is embedded in the hidden infrastructure of everyday life. Millions of people use Koch's products without ever seeing Koch's name attached. Koch refines and distributes fossil fuels, from gasoline to jet fuel, on which the global economy is dependent. Koch is the world's third largest producer of nitrogen fertilizer, which is the cornerstone of our modern food system. Koch makes the synthetic materials used in baby diapers, waistbands, and carpets. It makes the chemicals used for plastic bottles and pipes. It owns Georgia Pacific, which makes the wall panels, beams, and plywood required to build homes and office buildings. It makes napkins, paper towels, stationery, newspaper, and personal hygiene products. Koch Industries owns a network of commodities trading offices in Houston, Moscow, Geneva, and elsewhere, which are the circulatory system of modern finance. The book, Kochland, by Christopher Leonard.
is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, top of the midweek day to you, or morning, or afternoon, whatever it may be for you. We got a lot to talk about today. The first hour of our program, which will begin in just a few moments, will be a full hour with Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Middays with Mark. That's 202-808-9925, our telephone number. And we'll get to your calls in just a moment. And Congressman Pocan. In the second hour of our program, Elon Musk's Wisconsin invasion. Was last night's election result democracy's turning point? Or was it just the next step in this march toward autocracy that Musk and Trump seem committed to? Also, this is how full-on authoritarian fascism starts, particularly if people don't demand a stop. Let's talk about Trump deporting people who are absolutely innocent for lifetime sentences in a torture chamber. And in the third hour of our program, in Trump's autocracy, you are either loyal or disloyal. There's nothing else. Welcome to Liberation Day. The tariff announcements aren't going to come until about an hour after our program ends. The press conference is scheduled for 4 o'clock this afternoon. We'll see what happens. But Liberation Day, really? Yeah, we have some thoughts on that. And a crazy alert, freezing fountain of youth. Are you ready to take the plunge? Live longer by jumping into cold water? I'll tell you about that in the third hour. So, to begin, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. He is a current member and the chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's the co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and chair of the Congressional Equity Caucus. And pocan.house.gov, Equality Caucus. Pocan.house.gov is his website, also his handle over on Blue Sky. Congressman, welcome back to the program. Congratulations on the election in your state. I understand that you've got Supreme Court cases involving abortion rights, congressional redistricting, labor rights, and environmental issues that were all at stake last night, and it looks like it's turned out well for you.
Yeah, well, happy Liberation Day to you and your listeners. It was a big win. In fact, bigger than the win of having a fair Supreme Court and a good judge becoming a Supreme Court justice by 10 points was the turnout. We were saying if we could just get to the turnout we had for when Janet Protasiewicz won, when we flipped the court, that would have been really extraordinary. We surpassed that turnout. So, the amount of people that came out and expressed their displeasure with Donald Trump and Elon Musk was immense. This was almost like midterm level turnout in a spring nonpartisan race. And I think the message sent out of this is national and even bigger than I think people thought when you actually look at the number of people who cared enough to come out and vote at a time they don't normally vote because they're so unhappy with what's happening. That's extremely significant.
So there's a reason why David Koch and other right-wing billionaires, or I guess it's Charles Koch now, David has passed away, don't go out and hold press conferences and don't go into states where they're buying or funding politicians. They know it looks bad and there could be some backlash, and obviously that's what happened in Wisconsin when Elon Musk came to town and passed out $1 million checks. Isn't it possible, though, that Musk will just start doing it the way that, all these other right-wing billionaires do, passing out the checks, but doing it quietly so that there's no blowback, and we will soon be back to billionaires buying our elections and our politicians?
Well, and that's why I really stress that this was people getting out to vote in numbers that we did not expect, to say they're dissatisfied with what's happening in Washington. It's not just, Elon Musk, look, is a central casting villain, right? All he needs is the pinky in his mouth and saying something, and he looks like he's a villain from a movie. But it's bigger than just that. They don't want their health care taken away and their long-term care taken away and education funding and food assistance funding and all of the things that they're doing to take away from the middle class and those aspiring to be in order to give a $4.5 trillion tax cut for Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So I don't want us to get lost on, yes, Elon Musk came and looked like a buffoon, right? He wore a cheese head. He's not from our state. He dumped $20 to $25 million into our elections. But this was bigger than that. This was about what's happening in Washington, and every Republican who represents a swing district has to look closely at those numbers and the numbers in Florida and say, either I represent my constituents or I continue to just be subservient to whatever Donald Trump and this unelected billionaire say. But I think that's a real important point, Tom. This is more than just him coming and doing buffoonery, dropping a bunch of money in here. This was about their agenda that people came out in record numbers to protest.
And yet the 2 seats in Florida, they cut the Republican margin from 30 points down to 10 points roughly, but they still won. I mean, do you really think that Republicans are feeling chastened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a 20-point swing, right? So if your district is a 15-point or less swing, I would be probably, running and getting some Depends at Walmart right now if I were them. They should be afraid. And these results were strong. And it's, again, the level of turnout, Tom, to me is more important than the result itself, because we did not expect this many people to come out. And this many people came out because they're pissed and they're concerned and they're scared and they don't want to lose what they pay their tax dollars into, the services they get. And this is all being done for this giant tax cut. So I'm as tired as I am because it was a late night. I am so enthusiastic about what happened for a much bigger reason than I think many people are reporting on today.
I totally get it. And how long do you think it'll be before the exit poll results are out and we find out what percentage of those people who showed up to vote, essentially Democratic in Wisconsin, were voting against what is happening in D.C. right now and against the Republicans, or against, frankly, for that matter, the possibility that a Republican controlled Supreme Court could end abortion rights or redo gerrymandering or whatever in Wisconsin, versus people who simply were pissed off that the richest man in the world came to their state and tried to buy an election.
Yeah, I mean, within days, but I'll tell you, I went to launches the last several weekends. I knocked on doors myself for the Supreme Court candidate. And, the reactions I got, Tom, were not normal reactions. I went to one house of a couple in their 70s. They let me in. They both shook my hand. And then the husband gave me a big hug. I've never been hugged by someone I don't know before when I'm knocking on doors, because people are just so concerned about what's happening.
Yeah.
And they were so glad that I was out doing something because I share their concern. And that's all they want to see from Democrats. Cory Booker, thank you, Cory. What he just did saved Chuck Schumer and the Senate Dems in many ways, because, it wasn't so much that Chuck Schumer made a bad decision. I don't think his decision was as strong as what the House Democrats and most of the Senate Democrats ultimately did. It was in style, right? He didn't look like he put up a fight. Cory Booker started that going into 24 hours of his speaking on the floor, setting a new record. Then we have the election from Wisconsin. And, this is what I'm feeling when I'm doing town halls and talking to people. I've never done this many town halls this early in a session either, Tom. I can tell you what people are feeling. And, this, I think, has much longer term implications as well. And we just got to make sure that we continue to work together as we're trying to make sure that these damaging things don't happen by Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
There you go. So it's a good day. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. I'll shut up and stop asking questions and hand it over to y'all. We'll be picking up your phone calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. It's just about 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be in just a few seconds. Stick around. We'll be right back with the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Mark Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
You can find his website at pocan.house.gov. You can find him on Blue Sky at pocan.house.gov. And we will be right back with your calls for Representative Pocan. And welcome back. Patrick in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Congressman, I'd just like to know when I'm going to hear the Democratic plan to write every red district out of the blue states, to challenge every single ballot signature that's submitted in red districts, and start purging people off of the voter rolls. And I don't want to hear the weak garbage of we're Democrats, we don't do that. This is a winning strategy. The Republicans prove it every year, and we need to get on it so we can get these people out of the voting thing the same way they've done it to us. Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick, I disagree with you. I'm sorry. I don't think taking their tactics in that area, when we respect voting rights and we want to actually protect people, and that's why we have H.R. 1 when Democrats are in charge, we're passing as our very first bill. I think what we need to do is go into Republican districts and hold them accountable. If they're not willing to have town halls and talk to their constituents about their awful plans. I mean, there's a reason, right? If you're really proud of something, you want to go on your rooftop and scream about it, and they're not. They're hiding in their basement. So I'm glad to see the DNC and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee get together and go into these swing districts. And over the April break, I think you're going to have a lot of town halls by a lot of Democratic members in Republican districts, and this is the kind of fight we need. But I don't think it's, doing tit for tat on trying to knock people off voter rolls. I just don't think that's the answer.
Roger in Seattle, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Yes, Representative. I'm asking that the Democratic Re-election Committee get off the television. I think my neighboring Congresswoman Susan DelBene is the chair of that. But anyway, I think we ought to allow the Democratic Congress to support either senatorial candidates and or local candidates, even down to dog catcher, as long as they support a solid Democratic ticket, because then the dog catcher can publicize the congressman or the senator that is running for federal office.
Yeah, Roger, I don't disagree with you. A good friend of mine, Ken Weber, wrote a book, Branding Democrats. His son used to be the head of branding at Coca-Cola. I mean, this is what they've been arguing, right? That we need to, at all levels, if you're voting for a Democrat and you know what you're getting at the local level, the federal level, the state level, it's much more efficient than every candidate trying to be uniquely themselves, because there are shared values. And right now, those shared values matter more than ever. So I agree with that concept. I don't think it means the Congressional Campaign Committee should do anything other than what they're doing, recruiting good candidates in these districts so that we can get the majority in the House so we have a goalie in place. But I agree with you. Up and down the ticket, we should have shared values.
Congressman, we just have 20, 25, 30 seconds here to the break. Is Ken Martin on board with that? I haven't heard boo from him since he was elected chairman of the party.
Yeah, so he has launched this initiative with the DCCC to go into districts, swing districts, and do town halls in Republican districts. What Ro Khanna and myself and Greg Kassar and Bonnie Watson-Coleman and many others are starting to do. But if we can do this organized, this is exactly the right thing. Take it right to them, to their constituents, because it doesn't pass the smell test if you're afraid to talk about your agenda. We're not afraid to, and I just think it's a really smart tactic to do if we're going to block these cuts to Medicaid and education and food assistance.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. It's our Middays with Mark every other Wednesday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, and we're so pleased to have him. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan in just a second. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. When I was a little kid, my grandmother had a piano, and I loved to play it. I was incompetent, but I was figuring out all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of got away from it and, went to school and things got busy and just lost track of it. Well, now there's this fascinating new study out of the University of Geneva, Switzerland, that is making me think maybe I should go back and what they found was that they took a group of 132 healthy older adults, retired, 62 to 78 years old. Half of them learned the piano, half of them took music classes without learning the piano. And what they found was that those who learned the piano actually had the strongest increase in their memory, in their mental competence, their mental faculties. Those who took the music classes also did well, but learning the piano was a huge step. So check it out. There's a whole long rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
steps up, the cameras roll. He points and lays the blame. Says the press is out to get him, playing a rigged game. Fake news, they twist the facts. They're enemies of me. But silencing the truth is how you kill democracy. Donald Trump is crushing the media, tearing down the lies, turning facts to fiction, hiding wrong from right. Calls them traitors, calls them liars, bends the story fast. When the truth gets buried, it echoes from the past.
Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. Middays with Mark. And Jim in Tampa, Florida, listening on WMNF. Jim, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good day to both of you guys. Hey, Congressman Pocan, let me give you the applause. Your town hall thing on what Democrats have done was just excellent. And that needs to be pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Everybody needs to get on the page that you were on. Let me say, Trump burps, and it's echoed all the day through everything. You hear it from morning till evening and possibly the start of the next day. Cory Booker gets on a filibuster for 24 hours. He's like in a cave. You know, you don't even hear about it. There was a blurb on the national TV, and boom, that was it. And MSNBC, which, you know, the right doesn't watch anyway. So we need to get on those programs, and like Buttigieg used to do on Fox and everything else. How can we do that and get our message across all the time like they're doing, Congressman?
Yeah, sometimes it's tricky, and thanks for your kind comments, Jim, about those town halls. Because, you know, the mainstream media largely follows some of the same stories, and it's up to them on how they decide to cover things. However, I think these town halls, you know, every time I've done one, we've gotten good press coverage in district on them because they get it. Everyone gets it. If someone's afraid to do town halls and talk to the constituents about what they're voting on, that needs to be reported. The good news is the Progressive Caucus, actually, right now, we're helping coordinate members to go into a lot of these districts. It's happening. And I think over the April 2-week period that we're home, you're going to see a lot of these town halls. And it's exactly what we need. I mean, this election gave us the validation that that's where people in a swing state like Wisconsin are at. Now let's just make sure we continue to put that fight up in the coming weeks. And I really think we've got them in a place that their backs are against the wall, and we need to do this if we're going to protect these programs.
What are those 2 weeks?
It's not next week. We're still in Congress. It's the following two after that.
The following two. Great. Thank you. Richard in Western New York, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hello. Last fall, not long before the election, my local mega congressman started running these barely disguised political ads that said paid for by special funds authorized by the U.S. House of Representatives. So I called this program. To be honest, I don't recall whether it was Congressman Pocan or Ro Khanna. But whoever, I asked about how those were funded and learned it basically as some of their office funds. And so I wanted to get more details about that to write a letter to the editor to the local paper. So I contacted my local congressman through his official website asking for details about how much had been paid to each local TV station and so on. That was in October. When I still had heard nothing back last month, I thought, well, maybe I'll do a Freedom of Information Act request. But when I researched that, it seems that the Freedom of Information Act doesn't actually apply to Congress. So I wondered if you could confirm if that's true, and if so, is there some other way to compel the release of that sort of information?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, that is one of these odd things that we don't have the Freedom of Information Act to apply to Congress. But I don't know, again, the ads that you're talking something that was done on a political side, and it was campaign. You know, the office, you have what's called a members account, MRA account. And you can do some materials that have to be approved that are called franking to get the message out, whether it be mail or online, or I guess you could do it with even TV. But it's a limited amount of money. So if you saw a lot of it, it may be that it came from the outside in some way in the campaign world, especially if you saw it in October, because you're not allowed to use your franking privileges right before an election. So I would probably look into that. If it was October of last year, I can pretty much guarantee it's not from an in-office account. So that may help you, but without knowing exactly what you're talking about, I can't help you much more than that, Richard.
That's interesting. Franking goes way back to the founding of the Republic, doesn't it? That's where you put your signature instead of a postage stamp?
Yeah, but you have to get approval of anything, whether it's an online ad, mail that goes out in mass, or like a newsletter, things like that. But we can't use it within so many days of an election. So if it was last October, it was very likely not from a member's official account.
Who approves that?
A franking committee of nonpartisan folks that look at this stuff, and it's generally, I mean, if you're not, bending or breaking the rules, it's approved because it's your communication to your constituents.
Right, because it's supposed to be for like, a monthly newsletter kind of thing.
Yeah, but these days, I mean, people are doing that online a lot more, and
there you go.
Just using technology differently.
Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It is Middays with Mark, Wednesday edition. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan, the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Black Panthers, Portraits from an Unfinished Revolution, edited by Brian Shea and Yohuro Williams. This is from Chapter 1, In Defense of Self-Defense, Pathways to the Black Panther Party. People joined the Black Panther Party for many different reasons. The moment of politicization was different for everyone, but a few were commonly shared, including the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and the 1965 Watts Urban Rebellion. A more general sense of frustration and alienation compelled others to join the Panthers' ranks. The party exerted an enormous pull on the imagination of the members, especially those who had experienced police brutality. In the rebellious spirit of the times, the party's bold stance on self-defense resonated with those seeking fresh alternatives for achieving social justice and black liberation. Party members expressed a deep appreciation for other aspects of the Panthers program, including its community service programs, which grew out of a genuine love for the people. My neighborhood friend, a sister that I've known since I was about 11 years old, said, "Claudia, I want you to go with me. We're going to go and hear these Panthers speak at PS 92, which was an elementary school in our community." I said, "Okay, I'll go, I'm down." I listened to these brothers speak and I heard the pitch. I saw the determination and I saw the compassion. I thought, wow, this is the feeling that I used to get when I went into clubs and popped my fingers and got on the dance floor. It was the same feeling, except it was bigger for me now. It was bigger than me. It was full of love of the people. No longer did we have to argue and fight about, what are you looking at me like that for? Or don't step on my sneaker, or this is my block. Now we really had something to fight for. We had a people to fight for. This is bigger than any gang or club. We had a goal. We had something to look forward to, which was the betterment of black people. It was most definitely something that I was searching for, but I didn't yet know what that I was searching. I didn't find it. It fell on me. That was the first meeting. That's what actually started the wheels in my mind for me to become political. I was rank and file. I did a lot of things. The easiest way to say it is just to imagine worker bees. You got one queen, everyone else works. Rank and file. Those were the worker bees. We did it all. The one thing I enjoyed the most was teaching the political education classes on 7th Avenue in front of the Harlem office. That was the most fruitful. But anything I did, it was for the love of the people. Wherever I was sent, or whatever I had to do, it didn't matter anymore because it was for the love of the people. We were trying to get the word out. If I had to sell 125 papers in a day and I got close to that goal, then I did a good job. I was originally from Queens and came out of the Corona branch of the Black Panther Party.
When the Panther 21 were arrested and went to jail, in order to keep those offices open and functioning, Panthers were sent all over the city to Harlem. I was one of the Panthers that ended up in the Harlem branch. That's how I got to be there on Wednesday nights to give the PE classes, the political education classes. I was extremely nervous the first time, but once I found my voice, then a lot of the people in the community who were just walking by were like, well, let me stop and see what this little girl is talking about, because I was indeed a little girl at that time. We started off every PE class with a 10-point program, and we ended every PE class with, okay, let me hear from you guys. What do you want to see different in your community, and how are you living? Then we would get the feedback, and then we would know how to concentrate our efforts. Rent strikes were crazy, because if you had to live like that, why should you pay rent? We did clothing drives. We did food drives. We did, of course, the breakfast program. There were a lot of other things that happened, and they might have been more meaningful, but those PE classes stayed with me. We were outside on the street in front of the office. When you were giving a class or you were having a talk inside the office and there were only Panthers around you, the feeling was just different than outside on the street. The Panthers knew what you were doing because they were Panthers and they were doing the same thing. Outside, there were constant questions and answers with the people. You had to give yourself up when you were outside in that crowd. You never knew who was going to say, we don't care about that. We don't care about you. You need to go away. There were a lot of people that just did not know where we were coming from and were afraid that if they were seen in the office or if they were seen asking questions, that they'd get reprisals, that they'd end up getting hurt. They were afraid. Things went so fast. Time seems to accelerate when you're always looking over your shoulder. At this time, it was all-out war against the Panthers, and brothers are being shot down in the street or set up or going to jail for years. We have brothers in jail since that time, 40, 41 years. We've had brothers that we've lost on the inside that we can't let the world forget. The government said, okay, we're going to lock them up and throw away the key and no one will ever care. But it's not true. We want them out. We want freedom for all political prisoners. We don't want any more of them to die on the inside. That's the biggest injustice. There were times when our cadre consisted of almost nothing but women, and that was when the brothers were locked up or had to go underground. I remember being on a front line against a policeman on horseback and being 6 months pregnant. What we wanted was a simple street light, and we got the community out there and we blocked traffic. I didn't know whether I was going to be trampled, my baby killed, but I knew I had to be there. I was an active member of the party from 1968 to 1971, and in those few years, I aged 10, 15 years. We didn't have much time to be little girls. We went straight to womanhood. Talking about these things is bringing up all of these feelings, though I hadn't thought about or touched on them for a long time. It seems that as you get older and you look back on the things that you've done in your life, you say, oh my God, I could have gotten killed then. When you're young, fear is not really in your vocabulary, and once you look back, you wonder, why wasn't I afraid? We didn't have much time to be afraid. It was all about survival. The Black Panthers.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. And John in Harlem, New York, you are on the air with Representative Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman, and congratulations, Congressman Pocan, on what happened yesterday with the election in Wisconsin. And this is a great honor to speak to you. I was a lobbyist for public housing people, the most forgotten people in America, and the thing of it was, we were lobbyists in New York, but we had joined with many other cities and fighting for the issues of public housing people, particularly in New Orleans and after Katrina. But we ran into the problem of congressional protocol, and we're still having that problem. I was trying to get into a town hall meeting with Congressman Nadler, whom I knew well, but because I live in another district, not that far from him, the district of Congressman Espaillat, I couldn't be in the town hall because of congressional districts. This has got to stop in the light of the crisis that we face with democracy, to suspend this and let us lobby together, not only in New York but across the nation. We're suffering with the same things under Trump and, as I call it, Trumpenstein and such. We have to be united together to help you and for you to help us. There can't be this disconnect between congressional districts and between constituents and their electeds here. So what can you do about that, or tell fellow Democrats or the DNC and that has got to stop? And also, the other thing is, there's a book I'm looking at here, the 117th Congress, the U.S. Congressional Directory from C-SPAN. And I paid $35 for this book, a few years ago. And we need to have those books available. So is there some way that the congressional members can get those books to us who are ready to lobby? And it has everything in it. Everybody's phone number from the electors from the Supreme Court on down to the Parliament.
Let's let the congressman answer your questions.
Great. Well, John, thank you, first of all, for your comments on the Wisconsin right now. I mean, it is a big message nationally. I agree with what Cory Booker said. These are not normal times, right? So I think we got to do things maybe in not normal ways. And that's why I think these town halls and other districts and other things that people are doing are needed. The one thing I will say is, every town hall I've done has been a overflow crowd. And if I have to turn down people who actually live in my district, it's hard to take in people who don't live in your district. It's different if you're a senator, you have the whole state. But when you are a member of the House of Representatives, that is a difficulty that is just, I don't know if I have an answer for it, because people do want to speak out right now, but my number one priority is my constituents, and I have to make sure that they're able to come. So, I think just think about that a little bit, that we do have that challenge. But, I think it is time for doing things maybe in outside the box ways, because we all have to fight together against what's happening with Donald Trump.
And let me add, there's a free app called Congress in Your Pocket that is the congressional directory. So, Nancy in Woodland, California, you're on with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, I just wondered if why Congress doesn't issue arrest warrants for Musk and his Doge boys, because they have no official status to be in there trashing the various departments that they're doing.
Yeah, so I just saw someone on social media suggested that too. We're not in charge of Congress, right? That's the problem. Unfortunately, the people in charge of Congress will never do that. So that's not going to happen. The two best things we have going for us right now are litigation and communication. So, we should support all the groups that are doing litigation. And there are litigation trackers out there. You can do Trump litigation tracker, Google it. And there's multiple ones out there. Support those groups. And communication, look, it's not misinformation. It's disinformation that is being put out by Trump and Musk and the Republicans. We have to counter that. So find your favorite Democrats who are putting out information and get that information out there, because in Wisconsin, that's what we did. And people came out in record numbers to vote because they are upset. We have the power. This is one continuous movement. Some of us happen to be sitting at the table in Washington. Some of us are helping activate the folks across the country. But we're all in this together. And I think the best thing we can do is work on litigation and communication right now as central strategies.
Mike in Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you. Mark, I'm 68. I'm from Wisconsin. I voted for Susan Crawford yesterday. My question to you is, economists say that in 5 years, Social Security will have to make cuts. Why is there no congressional bills coming forward to raise the cap? Biden wanted to do it to 400,000, but if we did it to even 1 million, it would last 30, 40 years. It would solve all the ridiculous problems that the Republicans are fighting us on. Why is it so hard to get a bill in Congress to raise the cap to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million? I don't understand. It's so easy to solve the problem.
Well, so Mike, let me answer it two different ways. One, there are bills, Social Security 2100 Act, other bills that lift the cap. And you're right, if you completely lifted the cap right now at 170,000, give or take, you don't pay another dime into Social Security. It's actually a regressive tax. if you completely lifted that cap and you paid proportionally, no matter what you made, you would have 75 years plus into the future for the fund. So there is an easy fix. And I think that is ultimately an answer that people will go to. The weird part was during the Biden years, he said he wouldn't raise taxes on anyone who made more than $400,000. So many of the bills don't do anything until you make $400,000, and then they lift the cap. But honestly, I always thought that was stupid, and hopefully we'll move on from there. But the second thing I want to say, and Tom, I really am concerned about Social Security right now, given the comments that we've seen from Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme, the fact that Donald Trump repeated lies about people 120, 130, up to 360 years old on the Social Security rolls. Look, the law since 2015 is no one over 115 gets a check. So he repeated lies for a reason. 2 Inspector General reports have said those are lies. And most recently, his Secretary of Commerce, a billionaire, said if his 94-year-old mother-in-law didn't get a check, she would just think it's a mistake and wait a month and get it. And if you call, you're a fraudster. Well, 40% of people live solely on Social Security who are receiving Social Security. So all of those things tell me they are up to something or hoping to be up to something. So it's important to be vigilant on those attacks right now. But specifically to Mike's question, there are bills introduced. And the way it works is if you lift the cap, you just keep paying proportionately on your salary. And it's, to me, a quite simple fix.
Dave in Hale, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi, Congressman. I've got a question I don't understand in a way. The administration that is being done away with for Social Security, is there a way that it can be funded somehow to assist these people in the big conglomeration of how long it takes for people to get things solved and set up, like through our townships or county, or even a small office space in one of our high schools? A lot of these high schools, it seems to me that some kind of a small grant or something should cover some kind of their wages and salaries and stuff. So, there isn't this big conglomeration of answering questions. I mean, everybody gets old. Why is the old people paying a lot of taxes for kids and children?
Dave, are you talking about opening field offices or satellite offices for Social Security?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, Congressman?
Yeah. So, and Dave, thank you, because I should have said that when I was talking to Mike. I mean, that's another thing. They fired 7,000 people from Social Security, so you can't get your services easily, and they're closing regional offices. I mean, don't forget, this goal goes all the way back to Grover Norquist and prior to Reagan and all the rest, where they want to reduce government to the size you can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub. That was Grover Norquist's famous saying. Now they have Project 2025 doing the exact same thing. So, the real concern is that they'll make it so that it's broken, and then people will say, okay, maybe we need something else. All of these are of concern, but I don't know how you'd have other units of government having access to Social Security databases and trying to do this work. The right answer is just don't break Social Security to begin with, and that's part of why, hopefully, Wisconsin's election results are sending a bit of a message to Republican elected officials. If you take away services that benefit working people, there's a price to be paid.
Larry in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I wonder if you guys can print up cards for every Democratic lawmaker and put 4 items on it. Democratic presidents have not given us a recession in 44 years. Republicans gave us a recession every time they took the White House from somebody else, Republican or Democrat. Republicans quadrupled the deficit the last couple of times that they were in the White House. 50 million jobs were created versus 0 for Republicans. 50 million for the Democratic presidents versus 0 for the Republicans. And 35,000 points was added to the Dow versus the 9,000 that the Republicans have added. Just 4 little items.
It's all since 1980, right, Larry?
Pardon?
All those stats are since 1980, right? Yeah. Okay, Congressman.
Yeah, and Larry, I'd add one more, that Donald Trump added more to the national debt than every president combined prior to him, because of the tax cuts he did the last time, the tax cuts for the wealthy. So, you're completely right on all of those points. I think right now, though, the reaction that we're seeing, at least from the electorate in Wisconsin yesterday, was specifically around taking away services that benefit working people just to get a tax cut for the wealthiest. And I think, that probably should be our central message right now.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark. We've been doing, Congressman. Do you recall how many?
Oh boy, double digits.
Yeah, it's been a while. Congressman Mark Pocan with us every other Wednesday here, typically, taking your calls. You can find his website at Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can find him on Blue Sky also at Pocan.house.gov.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
It's 46 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Representative Mark Pocan. And welcome back. Denise in Calumet, Michigan. A lot of Midwest calls today. Denise, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman Pocan. Hi, Tom.
Hey.
I am just calling because I first want to congratulate Wisconsin. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want you to know that we have no representation in the UP from Congress. Jack Bergman is our congressman, and I've talked to his office practically every day since January 20th. I put myself out there and said, call me. I will help you set up a town hall. He came up here about a week ago, hid from the people, ran into businesses, and he said on our local TV he will not do a town hall. And I'm so scared about our Social Security because I lost 2/3 of my retirement when the Republicans did the crash in 2008, did not have time to make it up. We live on Social Security, and I'm worried not just for myself, but for everybody. Can you come here? That's all.
Well, Denise, I tell you, we are getting around. And Tom, to the very first thing you said when Denise called, the Midwest is where we can pick up a lot of congressional seats for the House of Representatives. In Wisconsin and Michigan and Iowa, there's a lot of the seats are swing seats. And I think the fact that people are calling from the Midwest is a good thing. I'm looking at probably doing a town hall, I think, in Iowa over the 2 weeks that we're home in April. And I'm probably going back to Western Wisconsin again to do another one to my neighboring district because this is important. So, Denise, I don't know if I can get to Michigan because I do have to make sure I'm doing all the other duties that I need to do for my constituents, which are my number one priority. But the good news is more and more members are stepping up and doing this. And it really does matter. And when you guys raise that they should do a town hall and they make some lame excuse up like, no, George Soros is sending around busloads of people across the country. I mean, it is such a stupid thing. But we start every town hall, Tom, asking who's here, who got a ride from George Soros, who's paid by George Soros. No one ever raises their hand to that. But it's a good way to mock the idiocy that Republicans are saying. They're told by their leadership not to have town halls. Well, that alone should be enough of a reason. And hopefully yesterday scares the crap out of some people.
Amen. Keno in Lakeland, Florida, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you, Congressman, for taking calls like this. I used to be a Republican. Is it possible that the Democrats say Ken Martin could make a list of some potential Republicans in the Senate and the House that those of us who are former Republicans and other people could write to and communicate with and say, please admit that Trump is fallible. We need checks and balances. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Elon Musk have these caps that says Trump was right about everything. Tom pointed out that's the mark of a cult that thinks the leader is right about everything. Our government was set up to have checks and balances. Could Ken Martin give a list of some senators that specifically might be vulnerable to reason that Trump, just admit that Trump is fallible and that groupthink? I wish the Democrats would talk more about sociology, points out how groupthink leads to tragic results where everybody says the same.
We got it, Keno. We got it. Thank you. Congressman?
Yeah. Keno, I agree with you and Tom. I mean, I do think they act like a cult. There's no question. And in fact, a Republican rep in California, David Valadao, I believe I was told over 60% of his constituents are on Medicaid. And here he voted to suggest cuts to Medicaid. normal people don't do that, right? You do it because either you're afraid of Donald Trump and Elon Musk or you're a follower of, and that's kind of how the Republican Party splits out. The best way to have these Republicans be listening to constituents, it has to come from their districts, honestly. Someone from Florida reaching out to someone from Michigan is probably not going to be super influential, but
Got it. We're hitting the break here, sir. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out.
The king walks tall, crown shining bright. No one dares to stand and fight.
Welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. It's our Middays with Mark hour here. Congressman Mark Pocan. Michael in Denver, Colorado. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Tom, so great to talk with you again. And Representative Pocan, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for your courageous work. It means a lot to so many of us, so thank you. And so I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court election. Barack Obama endorsed Susan Crawford shortly after President Trump backed the conservative Schimmel. And, you know, I was wondering how much of a role do you think Obama's endorsement played in this election, and just kind of your thoughts on the importance and I think still kind of continued relevance that his endorsement holds.
Yeah, I think in some communities it was significant, though. This is one where people, again, are so much farther ahead than where the politicians are. If the people lead, eventually the leaders will follow. Like, they were following this, and they're not supporting what Trump is doing. I think that was by far the leading activity. And Tom, I think, you know, with tariffs coming out to be announced today, you know, people are going to keep responding negatively to what Donald Trump is doing. And we're getting some more additional opportunities that we need to take advantage of.
There you go. Tracy in Superior, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. On our ballot yesterday here in Wisconsin, there was a question asking us whether we wanted to amend the Constitution requiring voters to present a valid ID. Now, I did vote no, because we already have laws in place in which voters have to show an ID. So my question is, what would the Republicans' end game be for putting that language on our Constitution, especially if other states may follow suit? Because it did pass yesterday.
Yeah, and Tracy, and it sounds right, and reasonable to people that you should have to prove you're a U.S. citizen. That's usually the argument. The real argument, there's many of, a lot of people just don't have the type of ID you need. If you're a senior citizen, you don't drive. My mom didn't, and her final probably 15 years. If you're a college student, people may not have that type of ID, and it does suppress the vote. And that's what we've seen around the country. So Republicans simply do it to try to pick who's going to vote as opposed to the voters picking who's going to represent them. And that's the primary reason, but it's hard to put that when it's on a ballot measure. It sounds good. We expected it to pass. But at the end of the day, it was already the law in Wisconsin.
Ron in Brookfield, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, I wanted to thank the congressman for his support in his town halls, and I wanted to point out why that's so important. even in Illinois, which you consider a blue state, but yesterday, every township of Republican township official in DuPage County who ran contested, and these were primarily incumbents, they lost. Only one won their election. DuPage was completely Democrat, and the township officials in Illinois typically are your committeemen and control the democratic process. So I wish there were more town halls throughout central and southern Illinois to be able to bring people out to try and turn other areas and other representative congressional seats to switch them to Republican. Are there any plans for Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, people are right now trying to focus on swing districts because logistically is a lot of work to put these together, just to be blunt, I know, because we've done them. But, you know, we had Delia Ramirez and Chuy Garcia and Jan Schakowsky and others sharing what happened yesterday in Illinois, so we're really happy to see that. I think this is happening, Tom, around the country. People are just not happy, and this was a chance for people to get out. But in a swing state like Wisconsin, where so much attention was on, where we were outspent, we had Elon Musk putting in $25 million. I think that just was kind of the cherry on the sundae that explained where the electorate is. And that's a good thing, because people, again, bigger than a win yesterday was the turnout. The fact that we had midterm election fall turnout for an April nonpartisan election spoke volumes. And I think there's really some movement out there happening.
Congressman, spot on. We just have 5 seconds here. Final thoughts?
One more week we're in Washington, and then we're home for 2 weeks. Make sure you're asking people to do town halls, no matter who your rep is. It's important.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan, thanks again so much for doing this all these years and for being here with us today. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Take care.
Good talking with you. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Elon Musk's Wisconsin invasion. Is this democracy's turning point? We'll discuss that right after the break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today from a book by Four Arrows, also known as Donald Jacobs or Don Jacobs. It's titled Point of Departure, Returning to Our More Authentic Worldview for Education and Survival. This is from Chapter 3, Community-Oriented Self-Authorship. Knowing the power of intentional and unintentional trance-based learning and how the latter can make us susceptible to believing untoward communication from authority figures. we can understand one reason self-authorship is important in the indigenous worldview. When we are in control of our thinking and trust our intuitive insights, our natural trance awareness helps prevent misdirection from external influences. It gives us the authority for what we can then instill in our minds to achieve. If someone such as a trusted shaman or psychologist has, certain skills at hypnosis, we might tentatively authorize him or her to help us form the most effective images, but we do so with full awareness. More important than avoiding negative influence from perceived authority figures, however, is the self-authorship via indigenous worldview that gives high degrees of individual autonomy to people while at the same time assuring that people use their freedoms to help their communities. In the indigenous worldview, the highest authority for all decisions comes from one's personal, honest reflection on lived experience with the understanding that everything is related. It is this understanding that makes a distinction between self-authorship, as it is generally perceived in the dominant worldview, and that of the indigenous one. Self-authorship is always ultimately in the service of the greater good in the latter. Self-authorship in indigenous ways of thinking comes from knowing that the highest experience for decisions comes from honest reflection on lived experience in light of realizing that everything is related in life, and this interconnectedness must be a part of all decisions. Michael Anthony Hart gets to these ideas about inner authority coming from such reflection. Through inward exploration, tapping into creative forces that run through all life, individuals come to subjectively experience a sense of wholeness. This exploration is an experience in context, where the context is the self in connection with happenings, and the findings from such experience is knowledge. Happenings may be facilitated through rituals or ceremonies that incorporate dreaming, visioning, meditation, and prayer. The findings from such experiences are encoded in community praxis as a way of synthesizing knowledge derived from introspection. Hence, indigenous peoples' cultures recognize and affirm the spiritual through practical applications of inner space, excuse me. Such a holistic understanding of accessing, trusting, and exercising our inner authority is the source of the creativity and knowledge synthesis we need for addressing our global problems. While Ehrman refers to this inner authority with the Cree term mamatawisin, which is the capacity to tap the creative life forces of the inner space by the use of all the faculties that consume our being, it is to exercise inwardness. This understanding is missing from our dominant worldview, where objective-based outward exploration is sought for guidance rather than introspective knowledge development. Dependence on external authority is the rule in spite of the call to question authority that has always resonated on the fringes. Under the dominant worldview, obedience trumps community-oriented self-authorship. Decision-making is rarely a holistic process, nor does it utilize alternative states of awareness, deep reflection, and community praxis. The random quotations below, selected from an internet search, reveal that obedience to authority is common under the dominant worldview. Obedience to lawful authority is the foundation of manly characteristics by Robert E. Lee. All religions have based morality on obedience, Alexander Herzen. Obedience brings peace in decision-making, James Faust. Justice is the insurance that we have on our lives and property. Obedience is the premium we pay for it, William Penn. I was not born to be free. I was born to adore and obey, C.S. Lewis. Every game has rules. Life's a game that has its respective rules. Obey the rules, win the game, Israel Ahavor. A wolf cannot have more than one head or it tears itself apart, Con Iggulden. From a social dissident on the fringe, Noam Chomsky wrote, any dictator would admire the uniformity and obedience of the U.S. media. From an indigenous-raised Lakota, Oyesa, the American Indian was an individualist in religion as in war. Reliance on external authority is not only the bedrock of choices in mainstream society and the main approach to moral development, but it also gives guides jurisprudence and conflict resolution. Authorized punishment or revenge is a primary goal for wrongdoing. Under indigenous worldview, bringing offenders back into community via affected members of the community is the goal. This relational approach expands the circle of land and seeks input from the wide circle of relevant people. Spiritual resources are employed via prayer or song, and subjectivity is as important as objectivity. Emphasizes this relationship as emphasizing spirit and spirituality, and in turn a sense of communitism and respectful individualism. And then he goes on about the indigenous worldview and how it relates to what we would call communism. Point of departure by 4 arrows.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the second hour of our program. My op-ed over at HartmannReport.com today is titled Elon Musk's Wisconsin Invasion, Democracy's Turning Point or the Next Step Toward Autocracy. And the essence of it is, in light of what happened yesterday electorally, down in Florida, we saw the Republican majority shrink by 15 to 20 points. And in Wisconsin, we saw Elon Musk, in particular, decisively defeated. And what does this mean, I guess, is the question everybody's asking. And there are two possibilities. One is it could just be an anomaly, right? It could just be that, this was a moment in time when the excesses of the Trump administration are so visible, where the economy is starting to slide, where Elon Musk's public persona is offending people. This could just be a magic moment that turned out well for Democrats, at least in Wisconsin. Obviously it did not in Florida. The Republicans won both races in Florida, although by smaller margins than a year ago. And my concern is that, in fact, Politicus USA is reporting that Trump is now talking with his inner circle about how to get rid of Elon Musk, or at least how to stop Elon Musk from having this high public profile, because clearly the public hates him, right? The public thinks of him as this. I mean, he's a Nepo baby, a Nepo baby. He's a rich kid from South Africa who was driven to his school in a chauffeured Rolls Royce, according to his father. Apartheid white Africa and white-controlled Africa. And when apartheid fell, the Musk family left, fled the country, and moved to Canada. And then Musk came to the United States on a student visa, but apparently he wasn't a student, or at least during part of that time. So we may even have an illegal immigrant. I mean, God only knows, but now he's a citizen. But, generally it appears that Americans are not happy with him, or somewhere on that spectrum from not happy to outright hate him. What happens if the Trump administration simply says to Elon, you got to stop getting in front of the cameras. We'll keep doing the stuff you're doing. We want your money to continue buying elections, but you got to start behaving like Charles Koch. Be the guy in the background. Don't be the guy in front of the camera. Be the guy who funds program after program, politician after politician, who controls the Republican Party. No problem with that, but just don't do it publicly. And by the way, it might help your company. Tesla just suffered a 24% drop in sales, the worst that they've ever had in the entire history of the company. So, it's possible the Republicans can clean this up and get past it. On the other hand, it's also possible that what we're seeing happen right now is very similar to what happened in 1899. William Clark was a copper baron in Montana in the late 1800s. He owned a whole bunch of copper mines, and he died in 1925. He was worth $5 billion in today's money. The second richest man in the world at that time, behind John D. Rockefeller. And the story goes according to historians, that in 1898, in the election of 1898, Cooper wanted to become the senator from Montana, the United States senator from Montana. And back then, the 17th Amendment, I think it is, was ratified in 1913, if my recollection is correct, which says that the people of the states elect the senators. Prior to 1913, which includes 1888, if I've been saying 19, forgive me, 1888, 1889, or 1898, 1899. Back then, the senators were picked by the legislature of the state. And so what William Clark did is he stood outside the chamber, the Senate chamber in Montana with a bunch of envelopes with $1,000 bills in them and passed them out to everybody who voted for him to be senator. And surprise, surprise, they all voted for him to become the senator, the U.S. senator. Well, when the word of this got to the United States Senate, they said, screw that, and they refused to seat Clark for a year. And finally, the governor appointed him to the next term, and so he served. I mean, at that point, it was a legitimate appointment. But the result of this, the consequence of Clark doing this, was huge. I mean, it was a national story, and it produced a major national, backlash. Even Mark Twain weighed in on it, right? So the Senate launched an investigation in 1899. It made huge publicity. This led to the passage in 1907 of the Tillman Act, which made it a federal felony for any corporation to put any money or any kind of support behind any candidate for federal office. That stood until the Supreme Court struck it down with Citizens United. Actually, I think they might have struck it down with the Bellotti decision. But in any case, that stood up until, the recent era. It also informed the 1910 Corrupt Practices Act, which, required a certain level of transparency among political action committees. And in 1912, progressive Republican President Taft doubled the number of corporations he was cracking down on using the Sherman Act, and he promoted the 17th Amendment, which was, like I said, ratified the following year. And the singular goal of all of these changes at the presidential level, at the congressional level, everywhere else, was to prevent Bill Clark's type of corruption, rich guys buying legislators, from ever happening again. And here we are. The Supreme Court struck down all these laws that were passed over the last 150 years to protect us from rich guys buying elections. And why did they do that? Of course, because rich guys had bought the court. They had bought Clarence Thomas. The John Roberts' wife made over $10 million, consulting with and working for big law firms that have business with the court. Sam Alito is getting, vacations and getting spiffed by billionaires and organizations. And of course, Clarence Thomas, millions of dollars flowing to him and his wife, Ginny. So, we've got this corrupt situation. It reminded me of the story that I actually opened my article at HartmannReport.com today with, was back in 1999, I was in Russia. I was working with a German-based charity. I was staying with a family. The mom was German. She was from East Germany. Dad was Russian. I don't speak Russian, but I'm pretty good in German. And so anyhow, and they had two little kids, a little boy and girl around, 7, 8 years old. And we were all watching TV one night and having dinner. And this guy comes on the screen and he's like, and this is Russian television, so I can't tell what's being said. And he's yelling and he's pointing at the screen and pounding his fist. And, he's obviously, passionate and campaigning. And suddenly mom, her name was Olga, just breaks out in laughter. And dad, the Russian guy, he's looking mystified, just kind of baffled. And so I said, in German, I said, what just happened? What's going on here? And she said, oh, that's Vladimir Zhirinovsky. He's the right-wing candidate. And he just said that anybody who votes for him in the election will get a turkey and a bottle of vodka. And by this time, the screen had shifted from Zhirinovsky to a news desk and a commentator lady who was talking very seriously to the camera. And she said, now they're trying to figure out where he's going to get all the turkeys. Like, they're taking this seriously. And she just thought this was the funniest thing. But her husband was like, well, isn't that how elections work? I mean, this was literally the first election in the history of Russia. The first free and fair election, 1999. And so it appears to me that what Elon Musk has done is basically just take Zhirinovsky's strategy. Hey, vote for me or for my candidate, and I'll give you a turkey and a liter of vodka. Only in Musk's case, I'll give you a $100 bill or a $1 million check. And the question is, will Americans buy this? Are we at an 1899 moment where we're about to see a flip away from all this corruption and all this, wealthy people buying elections, or not?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And I really think the next year or two, particularly the midterms in a year and a half, are going to tell us an awful lot about this. What say you? I'll pick up your calls in a little bit. And welcome back. Wayne in Bushnell, Florida. Hey, Wayne, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Hey, Tom, how are you, bud?
Great.
I've got a thing that's absolutely hurting me.
Mm-hmm.
This Musk guy.
Mm-hmm.
He has nothing to do with the American people. The American people have paid for everything. Everything that we do, the American people pay for it. They pay for our veterans. We pay for it, for everything. This guy and Trump is tearing it apart. Is there any way that we can sue these guys and make them pay for every wire, every computer, everything that they have ripped out of the government that the American people have paid for?
Well, there's...
If nothing else, that they should go to jail. But they need to have to pay for everything that they've torn up that we, the American people, have paid for.
I share your sentiment, Wayne, and there are over 50 lawsuits right now against Trump and Musk, and probably more coming every day for just this sort of thing. And you've got the unions representing the government employees are suing. Some of the government employees themselves are suing. Private groups, Common Cause is suing. Democracy Forward is suing. Mark Elias has some 30 or 40 lawsuits that he's running, maybe more than that. So, stay tuned. There's a lot of action going on, and I think, frankly, it's going to get better before it gets worse. So I'm not particularly...
Oh, my God. I hope so, Tom. Thank you, man.
You're welcome. Good talking to you, Wayne. Thanks for the call. Ron in Berrien Springs, Michigan. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. First-time caller. I appreciate you taking the call. Elon Musk is a walking billboard for Trump. He walks around with his hat, and I think the Dems are missing out on a good marketing plan. Maybe they should start using the same tactic, instead with a blue hat saying, "Everything Trump touches dies."
Yeah, that was the title. The title of whose book was that? Sean, do you recall? He was on our program. He was a guest on our program. Well, whatever. One of these Republican commentators. He wrote a great book called "Everything Trump Touches Dies." Yeah, say that again.
Yeah, it would be a constant reminder to the people watching, and the book Unredacted by Christopher Steele. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, he was on this program about it.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, I've got the book here, too.
Okay, good. I was wondering, I haven't heard you on your book reviews segment of your show.
Yeah, we've got to record some new ones. It's been a while. By the way, the guy who wrote the book, Everything Trump Touches Dies, is Rick Wilson. And Rick has, back when he was a gung-ho Republican consultant, he blocked me on Twitter. But he's now got a Substack newsletter that I subscribe to, and it's pretty good. It's free, and And you can find it over at Substack.com. Just plug in Rick Wilson.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, he's joined up with the Lincoln Project folks and that sort of thing. Ron, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you, and I look forward to future conversations. It is 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay tuned. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
In the heartland where the cheeseheads roam, a billionaire descends, makes Wisconsin his home. With pockets deep and ambitions high, he sets his sights under the Midwestern sky. Elon's come to town with millions in his hand, shaping courts and laws across this dairy land. From Green Bay shores to Milwaukee streets, democracy trembles under billionaire feet. Checks in the air, $1 million apiece, to voters sway as freedoms decrease. A state's highest bench, now up for sale. Justice weighed on a monetary scale. Elon's come to town with millions in his hands.
22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So Senator Booker made history yesterday, 24 hours and 18 minutes, so wiping out Strom Thurmond, Strom Thurmond's record, which is kind of cool. You know, a young black man taking down an old white guy who filibustered the Civil Rights Act, or a variation, an amendment to it. Senator Chris Murphy was with him for the entire 24 hours, by the way. It was kind of payback because Booker had stood with Chris Murphy when he did an all-night filibuster. And around 30 Democratic senators stayed with him for at least parts of the speech. They kind of spelled him, asking long questions so that he could let his voice recover and things like that. And apparently he fasted for a couple of days before this so that he could make it through without having to use the bathroom. And you get Cory Booker's a vegan, right? He only eats vegetables, no animal products, and so he's in pretty good shape. I love Cory Booker. He's just such a good man. Meanwhile, the Trump regime is sending a message by refusing to bring Abrigo Garcia home. This fellow, he's a Maryland man. His name is Abrigo Garcia. He has no criminal record. He's here with our permission. He was granted temporary protected status, and he's married to an American woman, and he's got a 4-year-old son. And right now he's in this hellhole in El Salvador, and the Trump administration is admitting that they snatched him and deported him illegally. They're calling it an administrative error. I call BS. We're at the point where people are just being, snatched on the streets and deported, and then the administration is saying, "Oh, there's nothing we can do about it now. It's out of our hands. He's in the possession of the El Salvadorans." It's just an administrative error. I mean, this is the definition of fascism. What the Trump regime is trying to tell all of us is we can grab anybody off the street and throw them out of the United States, and they have no access. For example, his family's trying to get him back. People, the lawyers have filed a habeas corpus suit. In other words, produce the body. That's what habeas corpus is Latin for, which means, give the person due process before you put him in jail. And they're suing and saying, you have to bring him back to the United States. And Trump and Homan and these guys are saying, well, we can't do that. We don't control this any longer. Which means that the answer would be the same if they had snatched you or me, as U.S. citizens. And this is how it starts. They always start with the most marginalized. You know, in Nazi Germany, the first 6 weeks of the Hitler regime, who did they go after? Trans people. And then they went after communists. They went after the people who were not popular, who were not powerful. That's exactly what Trump is doing right now. He campaigned going after trans people, and now he's going after people who are here without documentation, or people who are even here legally. We've had, you know, green cards and student visas, going after people who are legally but are not citizens. So once they've done that for a little while and people have kind of gotten used to it, and it's become normalized, coming after citizens and saying, well, you know, the Patriot Act tells us that if you're involved in promoting terrorism, and Hamas is certainly terrorism, so if you said something against Netanyahu, you're promoting terrorism, even though you're an American citizen, we can ship you out of the country. We can send you down to El Salvador. And by the way, once you're there, there's no way to get you back. It's a life sentence in one of the worst hellhole prisons on earth. You know, 15, 20 people in a cell with literally no mattresses, no beds, sleep on the floor, sitting up. I mean, it's torture. It really is. They're trying to break these people psychologically. And my guess is they're doing it. Remember Jose de Padilla? He was a totally innocent guy that George W. Bush, an American citizen, totally innocent guy that George W. Bush snatched and took down to Guantanamo and broke. They waterboarded him so many times that he is no longer capable of literally having a coherent sentence. An American citizen. George W. Bush did this. And now Trump is going down this same path. This is unmarked vans driving around, people, you know, cops out of uniform, not showing their badges, no warrants, no legal due process, no arrest warrant whatsoever, no judge issued anything. This is how democracies die. This is how fascists take over. This is just step one. What say you? I'll pick up your calls after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
27 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls in just a moment.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Edmund Morgan's book, The Meaning of Independence, John Adams, George Washington, and Thomas Jefferson. It's a small book. It's anecdotes of the three presidents. I think he's a little harsh on Jefferson and a little too friendly about Adams, you know, small quibbles. But it's a fascinating look into the founders of this country. And so today I'm going to read from the chapter on George Washington. The King of England, George III, was fond of farming. His favorite diversion was to ride about his lands, chatting with the tenants about the crops. Farmer George, he called himself. His arch opponent, George Washington, had the same fondness for farming, riding about his lands and talking about the crops. Indeed, there was nothing else he enjoyed quite so much. But there the likeness ceased. And among the many other matters that differentiated King George Washington from George III, none was more striking than George Washington's greater reserve and dignity. George Washington would never have taken the liberty of calling himself Farmer George, nor would he have allowed anyone else to do so. Even his friends took care to keep their distance, and those who forgot to were apt to be brought up short. A familiar anecdote, though perhaps apocryphal, well illustrates Washington's customary posture toward himself and toward others. During a meeting of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, a group of Washington's friends were remarking on his extraordinarily reserved and remote manner, even among his most intimate acquaintances. Gouverneur Morris, who was always full of boldness and wit, had the nerve to disagree. He could be as familiar with Washington, he said, as with any of his other friends. Alexander Hamilton called his bluff by offering to provide a supper and wine for a dozen of them if Morris would, at the next reception Washington gave, simply walk up to him, gently slap him on the shoulder and say, "My dear General, how happy I am to see you look so well." On the appointed evening, a substantial number of people were already present when Morris arrived, walked up to Washington, bowed, shook hands, and then placed his left hand on Jefferson's shoulder and said, "My dear General, I am so happy to see you look so well." The response was immediate and icy. Washington reached up and removed the hand, stepped back, and fixed his eye in silence on Morris until Morris retreated, abashed, into the crowd. The company looked on in embarrassment, and no one ever tried it again. It seems a most un-American reaction, not the sort of thing that Americans like to see in the men they honor, certainly not the sort of thing one would look for in a leader of a popular revolution today. Yet Americans then and since have honored George Washington far beyond any other man in their history. Moreover, he earned the honor and his dignity in reserve. The aloofness that still separates him from us helped him to earn it. How this came about is part of the larger story of American independence, the story of how the American Revolution transformed some of the least lovable traits of a seemingly ordinary man into national assets. For besides his aloofness, Washington had other characteristics which at this distance appear less than admirable, but which served him and the nation well in the struggle for independence. Perhaps the most conspicuous of these traits, conspicuous at least in his surviving correspondence, was an unabashed concern for his own economic interest. Although Washington was fair in his dealings and did not ask favors of any man, he kept a constant, wary, and often cold eye on making a profit, ever suspicious, and not always without reason, that other men were trying to take advantage of him. Like most Virginia planters, he complained that London merchants were giving him too little for his tobacco or charging him too much for the goods he bought from them. When he rented to tenants, he demanded to be paid punctually and dismissed men's inability to meet their obligations as irresponsibility or knavery. If a man was so foolish as to try cheating him, he was capable of a fury that came through vividly in his letters, as when he wrote to one associate that, "All my concern is that I ever engaged myself in behalf of so ungrateful and dirty a fellow as you are." In operating his plantation at Mount Vernon, he inveighed endlessly against waste of time, waste of supplies, waste of money. "A penny saved is a penny got," he would say, or "many mickles make a muckle," by which he apparently meant that many small savings would add up to a larger one. Even in dealings with his mother, he was watchful, for he thought she had extravagant tastes. He was ready to supply her real wants, he said, but found her imaginary wants indefinite and oftentimes insatiable. Even after he left Mount Vernon in order to win a war and found a nation, his intense absorption with his estate persisted, somehow curiously out of place now and out of proportion to the historic events that he was grappling with. In the darkest hours of the war and later during some of the tensest national crises, he took time to write to the managers of his plantation about making it show a profit. In early December 1776, for example, after fleeing across the Delaware with the remnants of his army, he sent home instructions to make do without buying linen for the slaves, as a price is too heavy to be borne with. And while he was president, his weekly directives to his managers far exceeded in length the documents he prepared for his subordinates in government. No detail was too small for his attention. In December 1792, while his cabinet was rent by the feud between Jefferson and Hamilton, he sent orders that Anthony's, this is one of his slaves presumably, sore toe should be examined, and if it requires it, something should be done to it. Otherwise, as usual, it will serve him as apprentice to be in the House half the winter. 3 months later, when Hamilton was under attack in the House of Representatives for alleged corruption in the Treasury Department, Washington was worried that Caroline, who was never celebrated for her honesty,
Help support Progressive Radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it. Recently, I did an op-ed and a little rant here about what happens when you raise the top income tax rate on morbidly rich people to 90%, and how, that helps reduce income inequality and funds the government and all kinds of good positive things. What about corporate taxes? We really need to go back to the 50% top corporate income tax rate that we had under Dwight Eisenhower, for example. The reason why is not on the assumption that we're going to collect all that money, but what it does is it causes corporations to change their behavior, to do things to try to get tax deductions so they don't have to pay that in taxes. And what are the main things they do? They develop new products. They do research and development. They become more competitive. They open up new stores. They pay their employees better. They offer better benefits. All of these things are 100% tax deductible and thus lower their corporate income taxes and help out America. You can read all about it over at hartmanreport.com.
He rolled out of Mar-a-Lago with a crown made out of gold. Said today the people triumph and the truth is what I'm told. Fox and friends were weeping. Rudy poured champagne. They lit a fire of cheeseburgers and danced in the acid rain.
Hey, it's Liberation Day.
Says the guy with 91 indictments. He's free from all the rules. Laws are just suggestions, right with the Bible upside down and his fist up in the air. He freed us from democracy and common sense and care. He rode a golden golf cart down Fifth Avenue with flags that said you're fired and a mob dressed red, white Q. They banned all books but art of the deal and maps now Magalore. 2+2 is fake news and 3's just deep state war. Oh, say can you see through all that spray tan mist as Lady Liberty face palms and reconsiders this twist? The founders scream in spectral rage. Jefferson throws a chair while Lincoln tries to climb down from his monument in despair. On its Liberation Day, from facts, from truth, from science, he waved a Sharpied weather map like some divine alliance. They crowned him king of freedom, if freedom means obey. And Melania blinked in Morse code, please take me far away.
Yes, indeed, it's Liberation Day. 36 minutes past the hour. So picking up your calls here, Ron in Frankfort, Ohio. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. My pleasure. What's up?
Well, I heard the guy suggest Congressman Pocan earlier about, why don't we do what they do and just kick them off the voting rolls? Now, I don't agree with that, but I'm going to ask you what you think about, is there a chance that we could pass a law to where, like, if I go in and I cheat or I'm not who I say I am and I vote and they catch me, I can go to prison for that?
Well, that's already the case in every state. You can, fake voting, false voting, illegal voting is a crime in every state in the union, period.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's my point. I would think, I would hope that if somebody illegally kicked you off the voting rolls, that they should suffer some kind of fate like that themselves.
I agree with you, but they don't, because the Supreme Court said that throwing you off the voting rolls is not illegal. It can be, all you need is the smallest justification. If somebody didn't vote in the last 2 elections, you can throw them off the voting rolls. If somebody didn't return a postcard that you mailed to them, you can throw them off the voting rolls. Or if their name is similar to the name of somebody else in some other state who's a felon, you can throw them off the voting rolls. So, it's 5 corrupt Republicans on the Supreme Court set this thing up. I disagree with Congressman Pocan. I think that if a couple of blue states were to start kicking people off the voting rolls in rural districts, in their red districts, and do so publicly, do so, proudly, just, proclaim it, that it would produce a national backlash that might cause Republicans to have to repeal these laws. But, I get it. The Democrats want to be the guys who are doing the right thing and doing it the right way. So, Ron, thank you for the call. So what?
Well, might say one more thing.
Yeah.
They need to put it into law. I'm sure that they're kicking, the way they do it is dirty. They have to be kicking some Republicans off that list, too. And if you can bring it up to them that way and more or less shame the Republicans in voting for this law to protect their own voters.
Yeah, except that the Republicans know that if an occasional Republican gets kicked off the list, it's by accident. And the vast majority of the people getting kicked, so, they don't care. They're not going to care. Ron, thank you for the call. Anna in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Anna, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hey, Tom. First of all, this is Anonymous. Thank you for recommending me on your channel. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And second of all, first of all, they need to stop playing by the rules. That's just normal, because this is not normal times. But the other thing is, earlier in the hour when you said about whether the what happened in Wisconsin is like a fluke or something, I read an article recently, just yesterday, with MSNBC claiming that Elon Musk is the new boogeyman. And I think that is a grave error, and that we need to stop doing this X is the boogeyman, so vote for us because we're better, but not offering anything of value to people who are struggling. I also think we need to stop saying that the economy's been great too, because that's gaslighting at this point, because it hasn't been great for years for many of us. The stock market's been great for rich people, but like most of the people, I'm a millennial, so I'm struggling with student loans. So are most of the people in my generation.
Yep.
And just going, but I feel like it's been every year it's progressively like I have a gun to my head because I have to vote Democrat or Trump, you know, and I think that they need to stop this tactic of scare tactics and start actually going with policy that is popular, like Medicare for all or getting rid of student loans, instead of just saying, well, the other guy is going to break the country. It may be true, but it's not a good thing.
You are singing my song, Anna. You know, although I have nothing wrong with identifying the boogeyman, the problem is, and which I mentioned, you know, before the break, is that if the main reason Wisconsin went with the progressive judge, Susan Crawford, if the main reason that they voted for her was because they were disgusted by Elon Musk, that's easily solved by Republicans. They simply tell Elon to drop his profile and just keep doing what they're doing. If, on the other hand, they voted for her because they're concerned about, you know, the damage that a Republican, in that position would do to abortion rights or gerrymandering or the environment, these are all big issues that are before the Supreme Court of Wisconsin right now, then, you know, that's a really good sign. And we really won't know for 3 or 4 days until they've compiled the results of the exit polls.
Yeah, exactly, the exit polls. But like I said, it's just that is a poor strategy that has been happening since 2016, and we've seen where it's gotten us, and it needs to change because there's all of these policies. There's ways to, like with Bernie going to the red state.
Yep.
Stuff like that. Like, they could be doing that instead of just saying, oh, well, Elon's bad.
Yeah, you can't win elections just saying, I'm not the other guy. And I'm with you. The challenge, of course, is that you've got, you know, the Jared Goldens and Josh Gottheimers of the Democratic Party, the guys who take, you know, millions and millions of dollars from big corporations and vote the way that those corporations want them to, and are the main obstacles to reforming things like student loans and Medicare for all, because they're taking money from big banks and insurance companies on the one hand, and then on the other hand, of course, you've got the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is about 100 members in the House, which is about half of the House, but it's still not enough. It's not the majority of Democrats in the House, and certainly not the majority of Democrats in the Senate. So, you know, we got a hell of a lot of work to do, and in my mind, Anna, the place where that work begins is at the local level. If you join the local Democratic Party and become a committee precinct person, the committee precinct people decide who are going to be the primary candidates, so you can pick nothing but progressives, help write the platform for the party for the state, and that then informs the national platform. And they're the first ones when your member of Congress or your senator comes back into your state, the first people that they meet with before they hold a town hall, before they have any events with citizens, the first people that they meet with in private are the precinct committee people in the party. So you have tremendous influence and power. And it's a volunteer position in 95% of the cases. I mean, there's a few districts where it's paid and you run for it because it's more of a full-time job. But those are few and far between. And most Democratic parties around the country are begging for people to become precinct committee people. So spot on. Anna, you nailed it. Carol in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Hey, Carol, what's up?
Hello. Hi, Tom. Hey. Hi, Louise. How you doing?
Good. What's up?
Hey, I just wanted to say I've been thinking a lot about this abduction thing that's going on with people, and this is not right. It's not right ever to be abducted with people with their faces covered, their bodies covered, no name tags, so on and so forth. That is an abduction, and people need to fight back. People, remember this as you're listening. Never, ever, ever let them take you to the second location. Never. And the first thing, you got to fight back. You bring any place you walk, you have at least one or two people, friends, just friends, walking you. Especially if you're out in the open, because they love to do that when you're isolated. You just walk with a couple. Wear a whistle around your neck. Blow that thing like crazy and yell out, "I need a lawyer." And while you're doing that, the people that are with you, you have them, if this is not assault, you have them grab that mask that's over their face and pull it down, and somebody else or yourself or somebody get a snapshot of that face. And this will curb this stuff right now.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I called about, but that's my point.
Okay.
Well, the other one, so never let them take you to second location. The other one is about the Joy. He has quit now.
That's
So
right.
I would like an update on Mr. Pocan. He was one of my main go-to on the mail situation. But what I wanted to ask him is, now he's resigned, thank goodness, and please, any postal workers, call in. I've called about to get an update that this is their time to fight against the privatization that Trump wants to do himself, apparently.
Yeah, he's
So
going to
call
replace
in
DeJoy with
if you
somebody.
got some updates.
He's going to replace DeJoy with somebody who's going to try and privatize the post office. This is. I mean, it's part of Project 2025. They want to privatize Amtrak as well. Carol, thank you for the call. 46 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's talk media for the sane among us. Yes, we are still here, still sane, and still talking. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Donna in Frontier, Michigan. Hey, Donna, what's on your mind today?
Well, I had this very strange thing that happened to me when I was voting. I voted in every election since Nixon, and mostly Democrat. I made a mistake with Nixon. In any case, this last election, I went online and I looked up my voter registration just for the heck of it, because it seems to me there were shenanigans going on, and I was not registered.
Whoa.
Not only have I voted in every election, during the primary, I actually worked the primary.
Huh.
So I was completely flummoxed, and
so did you reach
I
out
went
to...
to the Secretary of State, and I
Jocelyn Benson.
re-registered, so I didn't have any problems. But how did that happen?
Well, that's a question to ask, Jocelyn Benson's office, your Secretary of State. What the hell happened here?
Yeah.
They should know. They should know how
I-
and why you were removed.
I wanted to ask Tim Walberg, but of course he's in hiding. The only time he shows up for a town hall is if there's veterans involved.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Which irritates me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the answer to the question, Donna, but if you find out the answer, would you call us back and let us know?
Will do.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Good on you for voting all these years. Good on you. Umberto in Hialeah, Florida. Hey, Umberto, what's on your mind today?
Very good afternoon. Tom, I have what I consider to be a very controversial question, and then again, I hold a very controversial position, so I need to ask your advice. I'm originally born and raised in the Northeast in New Jersey, and I've been living here in MAGA-dominated Florida now for about 20 years. I don't recognize Florida from what it was 20 years ago. It was always a conservative state, but it has moved towards the fascist extreme MAGA right under DeSantis, and the Democratic Party down here is a mess. I mean, it is not a progressive organization, and I feel completely out of place in it. In fact, I feel completely out of place not only in Florida, but in the entire South. It's like living in a totally different country. And I'm seriously thinking about moving back to the Northeast, to my home region. I'm going to ask a very serious question. I'm honestly seeing the emergence of two totally different nations. There is MAGA-controlled, dominated America, deep blood red MAGA America, where the Republican Party has entrenched itself deeply into power to the point where it is like mission impossible trying to defeat it in many parts of the South, Southwest. And then you have blue, progressive, liberal America, where, with deep blue areas where the progressive ideals of freedom and democracy and diversity and social justice are still alive. And let me tell you something, the people in blue progressive America are getting tired of seeing of this MAGA-dominated regime in Washington dominating their lives. And I have a question for you. At some point, we're going to have to make a decision. If this MAGA regime and Donald Trump proves way too difficult to defeat and overthrow, blue progressive America is going to have to unite and protect its citizens and its residents from the effects of this regime by declaring independence and secession. Is that really illegal? Has secession been codified as illegal anywhere, or is it really possible?
Yeah, no, it is illegal. There is a constitutional process, but the way that most people are talking about it, it's illegal. Umberto, thanks for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
Trump's on Truth Social foaming at the keys, saying protect Elon Musk and all his EVs. He called the J6 boys patriots divine, but Kia Cybertruck and you're doing hard time. They're terrorists, y'all, not petty little vandals. They scuffed some glass and left a note by the handles. Forget the mob that stormed DC, that was just a tour. But Kia Tesla, oh Lord, that's domestic war.
52 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Ro in Medford, Oregon. Hey, Ro, what's up?
Hi. I drive to Ashland frequently. It's 10 miles on the freeway between where I get on in Medford and get off in Ashland. And up until about, 3 months ago, I could see 3 big truckloads of Teslas heading north in the 10 minutes that I'm driving south. Mm-hmm. In the past few months, none, zero. There's no more Teslas going up to you guys in Portland and Seattle, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. Well, they just got their quarterly sales reports out, and my recollection is they're down 24%. So their stock price is continuing to tank, which is wildly inflated to begin with, because Tesla's been dealt with as if it was a meme stock rather than a tech stock rather than a car company. And now they're a failing car company, it appears.
So yesterday I saw a truckload of Hyundai EVs. Mm-hmm. So people are still caring about the environment.
Yep. Yeah, I have a Hyundai Ioniq 5. It's the best car I've ever owned in my whole entire life. It is just amazing. It's like driving a spaceship. And, just plug it in at home. It's costing me the equivalent of around, 75, 80 cents a gallon gas. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful car. Ro, thanks for the tip and for the observations. Appreciate it. Glenn in Grants Pass, Oregon. Hey, Glenn, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. So I had a simple one, and it was simply, if Mr. Trump should put us into a true constitutional crisis by a judge saying or in contempt or something against him, could we not organize state marshals and possibly even state National Guard to enforce law against him?
Not to enforce federal law, no.
Bummer.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible he's violated some state law someplace, but New York went after him for that before for fraud and not paying his taxes. But no, states can only enforce state laws. But great question, Glenn. Keep thinking. I like the way you're thinking. Lee in Sepulveda, California. Hey, Lee, what's up?
What's up is I want to answer Anna with and your statement about Wisconsin, the judge's history was the exact opposite of her opponent. It was so clean and everything. So, and young people were running to the polls, as I understand it, especially young females. So it's really encouraging that they just took that $25 million and let old Musk stick it. Anyhow, what I'm calling about is the 5th. Some of your callers have said the 5th is demonstration day.
Yeah, Saturday.
The 10th is the 10th is a demonstration day. Mm-hmm. And on I've told you about PASOIR.com before. They have a 6-day plan from the 15th of April to the 20th of April, and the point of it is to have us get how to demonstrate. It's going to be information and education about how to demonstrate, how to use the First Amendment properly so that there's not the beatings over the head and all the shootings and all the awfulness that went on for the last decades. It's going to be an information and education in 6 days for all of us in this nation to grasp peaceable assembly.
Great. What's the website, Lee?
P as in Paul, ASOIR.com.
Okay, great.
And
thank you very much.
And all those people who go to those things, we're going to snowball this thing so that those 6 days are just going to be huge for all of us.
Well, we'll see. I'm seeing, movements literally all over the country, and I think that if the largest movement in the history of the United States, I believe, was the George Floyd protests. It might have been the anti-Iraq protests in late 2002, early 2003, the anti-Iraq war protests. But, if we have people in the streets at that level, at the level of the anti-Iraq war protests, at the level of the George Floyd protests, that's going to be a really good omen for, what's happening going forward. And my sense of it is it's not going to be people will show up and go, yeah, we did it. Now we can go back to sleep. I think it's going to be, a major, basically a recruiting ground for future efforts. So, we'll see how it plays out this Saturday. But I think it's going to be one of those pivot points, one of those hinges in history, one of those hinge moments in history where things go from one state to another. We'll see. I'm, state, liquids or gases kind of thing, or one political state to another. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms, in our fields, our streets and our sewers, our bodies and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until at last we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits in that secret a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. Punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it. The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about health care and health finance. They are different. Health care is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Healthcare is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Healthcare is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate healthcare has convinced us that some people deserve healthcare and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us or could ever keep us from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different, inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty, while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer health care, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide health care to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest health care program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single-payer is demonstrably sound and imminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. It owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of healthcare. I believe this healthcare is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are healthcare. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer healthcare is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people, and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18, and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. A lot going on. By the way, Louise went out, my wife, went out this morning at the request of our family physician, for a kind of annual blood draw thing, and one of the things that they wanted her to test was her cholesterol. And the people at the lab said Medicare turned down payment for your cholesterol test. And she's like, what? I mean, that's just like part of a routine physical, right? Particularly for somebody who's a little older. And they were like, yeah, this is, and what we don't know, I mean, we've never had this happen before. What we don't know is if Medicare has changed its policies in the last couple of months as a result of the Trump administration, or if Medicare was always refusing to pay for cholesterol tests. Louise has been on Medicare for, at least 6 or 7 years. And, I don't recall this ever happening before. And so I'm just wondering if any of you have had this similar experience, that Medicare is starting to refuse to pay for things. Because typically they don't, never have before. Meanwhile, Donald Trump seems to be a little upset. He's got 4 Republican senators who are just not going along with everything he says. You got Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, these four Republicans. And Trump went after them at 1 o'clock this morning Eastern time. He did a post on his Nazi-infested social media site. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul, also of Kentucky, will hopefully get on the Republican bandwagon for a change and fight the Democrats. And then, he goes on his rant, and he says, they're playing with the lives of the American people and right into the hands of radical left Democrats and drug cartels. Yeah, all right. I mean, the hyperbole is insane. And he goes on, to the people of the great states of Kentucky, Alaska, and Maine, please contact these senators and get them to finally adhere to Republican values and ideals. I don't know, maybe we should be calling McConnell, Murkowski, Collins, and Paul and saying, please continue to oppose Donald Trump's agenda. What do you think? This mostly this rant. These 4 senators have said that they're actually considering a resolution that would end the emergency, the state of emergency that Trump has declared, economic emergency that allows him to do these tariffs. Let me explain. Congress exclusively has the right to establish tariffs and to set what those tariffs are. And when Congress sets tariffs, then they tend to work the way they're supposed to. They bring manufacturing back home because manufacturers know that those tariffs are going to be in place for quite some time because Congress did it. On the other hand, there is this one little loophole, this little provision in the law that says that during time of an emergency, and it's, it was written into the law this way with the Great Depression and World War II in mind. that during a time of emergency, the president can unilaterally declare tariffs. So what Trump did is when he came into office, he declared a state of emergency, economic emergency. Said, we're in a crisis, even though there was no crisis. I mean, the economy was doing better than, we had lower inflation than we'd had since the 60s. We had lower unemployment than we'd had since the 50s. We had the first, the best 4 years of job growth and economic growth in the history of the United States. The Democrat from between 1980 and today, Republican presidents in aggregate have produced 0 jobs, and Democratic presidents have produced over 50 million jobs, as Larry from Los Angeles pointed out in the last hour, or the hour before that. I mean, things are going pretty good, but Trump declared the state of emergency, which gave him the power to impose tariffs. And he's been doing them. We'll put it on, we'll take it off, we'll put it on, we'll take it off. And there's even been some speculation that Trump's sons or people in Trump's family, knowing that, tomorrow he's going to put a tariff on cars, so they're short selling car stocks, and then, and then knowing the next day that he's going to take that tariff off the next day, they start, buying, long positions on, just basically they're manipulating the market. It's a pump and dump scheme. But whatever's going on, it's just like, it's craziness, and it's hurting America, it's hurting American consumers, it's driving up prices, it's producing inflation. And so there's this resolution in the Senate that is going to come up for a vote next Tuesday, and it would basically end this state of national emergency, which means going forward, Donald Trump won't be able to impose tariffs by presidential decree. He'll have to go to Congress and ask for them. And while this resolution is largely being promoted by Democratic senators, so far, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins have all indicated to various news media that they may support it. And that's what's got Trump's panties in a wad. It's what he's so upset about. So keep an eye on this. This could get real interesting. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, the Wall Street Journal is warning Trump in the wake of yesterday's wipeout in Wisconsin. The headline in this, it was a late night editorial. They wrote it last night after the election returns were in. And it's titled, "The MAGA Backlash Has Arrived." And basically what they're saying is that Donald Trump needs to recalibrate. This is from the editorial, quote, "The comfortable win by Democratic Judge Susan Crawford is the second sign in 2 weeks of a political backlash against the Trump presidency." And, they point out that election became a referendum not on the candidates, but on Trump and on Musk. And they write, that's a warning to the GOP that the Trump-Musk governing style is stirring a backlash that could cost them control of Congress next year. The elections are a warning to Trump to focus on what got him reelected, especially prices and growth in real income. And he says, and they write, the MAGA majority may have a shorter run than advertised. I think it's over. I really do. I think the MAGA majority is dead. I think these guys are running on fumes. The question is whether they will be able to suppress enough votes in the election coming up in a year and a half, the midterm elections, to hang on to their power. I'm skeptical, because the thing that they're genuinely terrified of is if the House falls into Democratic hands, you're going to start seeing congressional investigations of Elon Musk. There were 33 different federal agency investigations into Elon Musk's companies. SpaceX was being investigated. Tesla was being investigated. He was being, there were all these investigations. All of those investigations, as far as I can tell, have been shut down, in large part because the agencies conducting the investigations were shut down, or the people in those agencies conducting the investigations were fired by Musk and his teenage wrecking crew. Now, that is certainly worthy of a congressional investigation. Donald Trump shipping people overseas, another congressional investigation. Donald Trump disappearing people with green cards and student visas, into a private prison in Louisiana, good for an investigation. Elon Musk getting government contracts. There was There was several $billion, I think it was $4.5 billion, something like that, that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act for rural broadband, so that, to spiff companies like Comcast or AT&T or whatever to run, fiber optics or 5G lines out to people in rural areas so that they can have access to high-speed internet. And now Musk has apparently got that shut down, and he's trying to get that money for SpaceX. Excuse me, for his satellite company, Starlink. Again, this looks corrupt. It looks like he's in a position where he can reward himself. I mean, Musk is only rich because Barack Obama gave him a huge subsidy to keep Tesla afloat when it was in trouble, and because NASA has been pouring cash into his coffers for SpaceX. He's a billionaire. I realize he made a lot of money with PayPal back in the day, but he's mostly a billionaire. The vast majority of his wealth, probably over 90% of his wealth, is coming from government contracts, or is the result of government contracts. And here he is running our government? Really? I think this level, this just kind of insane level of corruption, on top of the fact that he's ripping things apart. And then there's USAID. USAID was one of the agencies that was principally responsible for the end of apartheid in South Africa. The end of apartheid in South Africa was when the Musk family decided to leave the country. And now Elon Musk has taken down USAID. I suspect that's not a coincidence. And I'd love to see Congress investigate that too. So these guys have to be running scared.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
As Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal was pointing out last night. I got a geeky science for you, and I'll pick up your calls right after this. 16 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Tom in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Hey, Tom, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Well, I might be sent on an unscheduled trip to Louisiana saying this, but, the military takes an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yep.
Well, where I'm sitting, this guy in the White House looks to be a domestic enemy of the Constitution to me. How much is it going to take before the military really has to step in here and get rid of him? And I'll wait for your answer.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen. I mean, that's called a military coup, and that would be a very bad thing for America, number one. And number two, I think Trump has already headed off any chance of that by basically decapitating the senior leadership of the military and laying off the entire, the JAG Corps, not the entire Corps, but the senior guys. I forget what the job was, but it's the inspectors general of the various military branches, the people who determine whether an order from the president is constitutional or not. If Trump tells the National Guard or the Army or the Air Force or whatever to shoot at people like at Kent State, the people who would determine whether that's legal or not, they've all been laid off or fired or demoted. So Trump has, I think, already eliminated the possibility of a military coup or a military response. But even if he hadn't, that should be an absolute last resort. I mean, that would just be a genuine disaster, Tom. I would not want to see that happen. Thanks for the call. John in Hillsboro, Oregon. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Political theater. Senator Booker did a astonishing job.
Yeah, bang-up job.
But it should continue. And each time somebody from the House of Representatives or the Senate get their turn to talk, they should say, "Ladies and gentlemen, and my friends across the aisle, stand for the national anthem," and then play the Russian national anthem. And then, yes. They have English subtitles. You know, you can sing along with it. Yes. And then in the cafeteria, the blue plate special should be borscht and chicken Kiev.
Got it.
Well, to give some people's, attention, and just, kind of, it's, political theater is trying to embarrass your opponent.
Or ridicule your opponent.
By,
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, That's what I was thinking. Since Zelensky got his ass chewed by his nothingness, hey, okay, turnabout's fair play.
Yeah. So remember the Billionaires for Bush?
Oh, a little bit.
It was a theater troupe out of Berkeley that went national.
Oh yeah, they had.
They'd rent limousines and dress up in tuxedos and carry champagne and come out and say, "Yes, we're the Billionaires for Bush. We want more tax cuts." It was very effective political theater.
I suspect April 5th and the 10th, there'll probably be some political theater, people wearing masks and stuff like that.
I'm guessing. Yeah, I'm guessing, but
I mean, this is going to make it a party, Mardi Gras style.
I suspect that the Billionaires for Bush are going to come back rebranded somehow, and that we're going to start seeing a whole lot more, guerrilla theater, political theater.
Well,
I'm with
but
you,
indeed,
John.
I was just watching MSNBC. Now Trump is saying that he's going to get rid of Musk, in so many words.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too. I mean, he's now realizing that Musk is.
But I mean, flags of Russia, draped over the halls of Congress.
There you go, John. Thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. I have 8 suggestions for Democrats for messaging. Democrats seem to have a messaging problem right now. First, Democrats must frame the fight in simple moral terms. Don't be wonky like, hey, we need to expand social safety net. No, say no child in America should go to bed hungry. Second, Democrats need to stop playing defense and instead seize the populist high ground. Like when FDR said, they are unanimous in their hate for me and I welcome their hatred. Third, ruthlessly define the Republican opposition and the morbidly rich oligarchs who own them. Fourth, tell stories instead of facts. Reagan did this with the black welfare queen. He had to lie about it, but we've got lots of great stories. That's number 4. There's 4 more. And they're all over at HartmannReport.com. The title of the article is, If Obama Had Sent a Mob to Kill a Cop, Republicans Would Never Let You Forget It. And it's all about how Democrats can reinvent their messaging to start winning elections big. Check it out.
They came riding into town on horses borrowed from a theme park, with cowboy boots and business suits and flashlights in the dark. One had a crown made out of foil, the others followed blind, dropping memos marked top secret in a dusty D.C. wind behind. They're the gang that couldn't shoot straight, can't even lock a file crate, talking war plans on an app that teens use for a date. They shout about the deep state, but they can't find the gate. Oh Lord, protect us all from the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So, want to live longer? Turns out if you jump into cold water 7 days in a row, this is 57 degrees water. This is cold enough to make you shiver. Seriously, cold water. Your body starts going into what's called autophagy, or maybe it's autophagy. I think it's autophagy. Your cells literally rewire themselves and start killing off the cells that have become senescent. That is, the cells that are still drawing nutrients and producing inflammation but are no longer doing their job. The body starts disintegrating those cells, killing them off, digesting them, and it starts producing brand new cells. And this is an amazing study. It's from the University of Ottawa. And they've discovered this invisible adaptation. Your cells literally rewire their protective responses, transforming from a state of emergency to efficient damage control in just 7 days. It does take 7 days to do it, though. What I'd like to see is a study on, whether swimming in a swimming pool that's like 70 degrees, not which is still kind of cold to jump into, but not, body temperature. Whether that does the same thing, I don't know. I know that there's drugs that do this. Rapamycin, for example, does the same thing. But you got to talk to your doctor to get that. You don't need a doctor to jump into some cold water here. And over on one of the ADHD newsletters that I subscribe to on Substack, there's one guy who's just a huge advocate of turning your shower cold for a full minute before you get out of the shower every morning. And he claims that causes his brain to work better and his focus is better and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, but it's interesting. All right, what's on your mind? John in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, John, what's up?
Mr. Hartmann, I love your program, and thanks. You provide so much information, and certainly right now it's so important. So thank you for doing that. And Mr. Hartmann, this isn't why I called, but I heard you talk about your wife's blood work, and I had something like that happen on my wellness check at the end of last year. And it was some mundane, ordinary test like a B12 or D3. And I go to the lab and they accepted one and not the other. And it really wasn't the money. It was the principle. Loved my doctor. So I went back over and he looked like I'd lost my mind. And, they have those things all pre-programmed so they don't individually do it with all the lab work that they request.
Yeah.
So he looked at me and he goes back in his office and he said, well, there is another way. And he said, I've used this one forever. So he changed it. And he said, I'm going to go back in at the end of the day.
So he changed the code. Yeah. No, I got it.
Yes, sir, he did. And there was another way. And so I go, all of this is very close in Santa Fe. So I went back to the lab and it was approved in nothing flat. And he said, but I've never... He had never run into that on a
But that was before Trump, so maybe this is not a new Trump thing.
No,
John, I'm sorry, we're down to just 30 seconds here. If you had a question or comment you wanted to make?
The only thing I wanted to ask you is I've often wondered, when we're born, we get a Social Security card automatically, and I wondered why that can't include like a voter thing and be automatic.
It does in every other country. It does, and we're the only advanced democracy that requires people to register to vote. Governments keep track of who their citizens are from birth in every other country in the world.
Okay, so then I'm not nuts.
No, you're not, and it's just a crazy system. The whole voter registration system, was largely instituted after the Civil War as a way of, being able to filter out black people from voting, and it's just persisted to this day. John, I got to run, but thanks for listening to KTRC, and thanks for the call. It's great to hear from you. 27 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls on the other side of the break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option.
Today we're reading from Dorfman and Mallart's book, How to Read Donald Duck, Imperialist Ideology in the Disney Comic. And this is from the preface to the English edition. This book was first published in Spanish. To say that this book was burnt in Chile should not come as a surprise to anyone. Hundreds of books were destroyed and thousands more prohibited and censored. It was written in the middle of 1971, in the middle of the Chilean revolutionary process. Copper had been rescued, the land was being returned to the peasantry, the whole Chilean people were recovering the industries that during the 20th century had been the means of enrichment for Mr. Rockefeller, Grace, Guggenheim, and Morgan. Because this process was intolerable to the United States government and its multinational corporations, it had to be stopped. They organized a plan which at the time was suspected and since has been confirmed by Mr. Kissinger, Ford, and Colby to have been directed and financed by the United States intelligence services. Their objective was to overthrow the constitutional government of Chile. To realize their objective, an invisible blockade was imposed. Credits were denied, spare parts purchased for industrial machinery were not sent, and later the Chilean state bank accounts in the U.S. were blocked, and an embargo preventing the sale of Chilean copper throughout the world was organized. There were, however, two items which were not blocked: planes, tanks, ships, and technical assistance for the Chilean armed forces, and magazines, TV serials, advertising, and public opinion polls for the Chilean mass media. which continued for the most part to be in the hands of a small group which was losing its privileges. To maintain them with those of the U.S., their media prepared the climate for the bourgeois insurrection, which finally materialized some years later on the 11th of September, 1973. Each day, with expert U.S. advice, in each newspaper, each weekly, each monthly magazine, each news dispatch, each movie, and each comic book, their arsenal of psychological warfare was fortified. In the words of General Pinochet, the point was, quote, to conquer the minds, end quote, while in the words of Donald Duck in the magazine Dislandia, published in December 1971, coinciding with the first mass rallies of native fascism, the so-called March of the Empty Pots and Pans, the point was to, quote, restore the king. But the people did not want the restoration of the king, nor of the businessman. The popular Chilean cultural offensive, which accompanied the social and economic liberation, took multiple forms: wall paintings, popular papers, TV programs, motion pictures, theater, songs, literature. In all areas of human activity, with differing degrees of intensity, the people expressed their will. Perhaps the most important arm of this offensive was the work of the state publishing house, Quimantu, a word meaning sunshine of knowledge in the language of the Chilean Machupe Indians. In 2.5 years, it published 5 million books, twice the amount that had been published in all of Chile during the previous 70 years. In addition, it transformed the content of some of the magazines it had inherited from before the popular unity government and created new ones. It is in this multifaceted context, with the people on the march to cultural liberation, a process which also meant criticizing the mass cultural merchandise exported so profitably by the U.S. into the Third World, that How to Read Donald Duck was generated. We simply answered a practical need. It was not an academic exercise. For the Mad Dog Warriors on that September 11th, there were no paintings on the walls. There were only enormous stains which dirtied the city in memory. They, using the fascist youth brigades, whitewashed all the signing, many-colored walls of the nation. They broke records, murdered singers, destroyed radios and printing presses, imprisoned and executed journalists, so that nothing would be left to remind anybody of anything about the struggle for national liberation. But it was not enough to clean these cultural stains from the street. The most important task was to eliminate all those who bore the stain inside themselves: the fighters, workers, peasants, employees, students, and patriotic soldiers, to eliminate these creators of a new life, to eliminate this new life which grew, and for all that we created. This book, conceived for the Chilean people and our urgent needs, produced in the midst of our struggle, is now being published far from Chile in the uncle land of Disney, behind the barbed wire network of ITT. Mr. Disney, we are returning your duck, feathers plucked and well roasted. Look inside, you can see the handwriting on the wall, our hands still writing on the wall, Donald, to go home. This is written in 1975. And then this from David Kunzel's introduction. The names of the presidents change. That of Disney remains. 46 years after the birth of Mickey Mouse, 8 years after the death of his master, Disney's may be the most widely known North American name in the world. He is arguably the century's most important figure in bourgeois popular culture. He has done more than any single person to disseminate around the world certain myths upon which that culture has thrived, notably that of an innocence supposedly universal, beyond place, beyond time, and beyond criticism. The myth of U.S. political innocence is at last being dismantled, and the reality which it masks lies in significant areas exposed to public view. But the great American dream of cultural innocence still holds a global imagination in thrall. The first major breach into the Disney of this dream was made by Richard Schickel's The Disney Version, The Lifetimes and Commerce of Walt Disney, the book How to Read Donald Duck.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. A lot of people wonder, where did this whole right-wing movement to basically gut our freedoms and end DEI and all this other, where did this all begin? It all started back in 1951 with a book called The Conservative Mind, From Burke to Eliot by Russell Kirk. And he argued that if the middle class ever got too big, you'd see young people and women and racial minorities all get up on their hind feet and start protesting and basically screwing up America. And in the 50s, even Republicans thought he was nuts. But then the 60s happened and all those protests, and suddenly Republicans thought, yeah, he's right. We've got to destroy the middle class, or at least cut it back. And that was Reagan's mandate when he came into office in 1981. There's a whole article about this. You can read all the details. It's titled The GOP's 60-Year Conspiracy to Kill Our Democracy. None dare call it treason, but I will. Over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
You're out in the streets, you're raising your voice, pushing back hard, 'cause there ain't no choice. You see the storm, you feel the weight, fighting for justice before it's too late. But even warriors need to rest, even lions lay down in their nest. Take a breath, take a break, don't let the fire turn to ash in its way. Keep the fire, find the light.
Welcome back, 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Susan in Caldwell, Idaho. Hey, Susan, what's on your mind today?
Oh, another ICE story for you, and its use in intimidating voices of dissent. I live in a natural resources state, extraction from mines, forests, agriculture. Mm-hmm. Well, and agriculture is in a kind of an interesting position, trying to employ workers. And we do have the visa program, but which by design is a seasonal program. Well, that doesn't work for like dairies, which are a 365-day-a-week year, operation. Mm-hmm. So anyway, our legislature had been toying with, we're always importing all these ideas from ALEC and Texas and Florida for deputizing our law enforcement to enforce immigration law. And they were dealing with it last year. It went down, but one of the legislators who spoke against this, a farm owner, a large farm owner, and also a food products producer from eastern Idaho said, if you think this is not going to have an effect on what we do for, economic activity, and that's, and this year, the day after Mr. Trump was inaugurated, one of the California imports to all of our Republican groups here reported her to ICE, her farming operations to ICE, and within a week, they were at her farms and her, she grows potatoes and processes potatoes at her operations. They found one individual in her employ who had already been convicted and served a sentence for a domestic situation, and they're deporting him, leaving 3 citizen children in this country, who have no support from a working father now, but are now in our custody. Anyway, this legislator, still serving, was pointing out, I'm no longer an effective legislator. I now second guess everything I say because it was actually the vice chairman of the Ada County Republicans who put in the ICE tip, and they're using them now to go after people. And he's bragging about it, and they're encouraging everybody to report everybody in control.
Was she a Democratic legislator?
Oh, heck no. This is
Republicans going after other Republicans. Wow.
Yes, and the stated aim from this California import, and I hate to keep saying that, but these are very bitter people who come here. Yeah. They're trying to drive out the people who already lived here. That's a goal. We're going to make it so uncomfortable you don't want to stay. Well, I'm sorry, if you own, a couple tens of thousands of acres of farmland and a food production company, you're probably not just going to up and leave. But that's their stated goal. And they have hotlines all over around here. How to report, for the disaffected people to report their legislators, their county, their precinct person. And every time I see a report of a local Republican committee censoring their local moderate Republican legislator, for example, the only people who are talking about this, who the reporter interviewed, have all just moved here from California within the last 5 to 10 years. Wow. It's disgusting.
Wow.
You may have heard about all the ruckus repeatedly in northern Idaho, Kootenai County. That's the Coeur d'Alene resort just opposite from Spokane. Mm-hmm. It's long been a hotbed of California conservative retirees. Yeah. 40 years ago, I knew that was the number one retirement destination for retiring LAPD officers, for example. And they infest. This is a relatively unpopulated state, so it's real easy to get in and infest all these local political organizations and start taking them over from, locals who are just kind of benignly doing their thing, Mm-hmm. So now we have what we have. A sitting legislator who now has reported in an interview that she feels that she has to second guess herself in representing her constituency because of what happened to her farm. And I'd like to point out, when you run an operation and you have employees, there's only so far you can go in questioning documentation that's presented to you. We all know we have to present our I-90 documents to get a job. Well, if you start questioning validity of someone's documentation, you run the risk of a civil rights lawsuit from another branch of the federal government for that purpose. And I am aware of farming operations that have been successfully prosecuted for doing just that, questioning documents that are presented for employment purposes.
Wow, it sounds like a wild catch-22. Susan, thank you for the that's incredible. Thank you for the update from Idaho. It's always nice hearing from you. Thank you. Beth in Chicago. Hey, Beth, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for your vast wisdom, and I really love that quote about David Attenborough. And I'm a conservationist, and I lived on a cattle ranch for years. It wasn't my family's, but I know that the cattle eat grass, and they're huge, right? So humans can do the same thing, and especially not eating seafood. But anyway, so here's my problem. Here's a personal story. I am disabled physically after working 30 years in an industry. So I've been 6 years on SSDI. My check is late for the first time ever this month.
Uh-oh.
And it's SSDI.
Right. Social Security disability
live off
insurance.
of that.
Has it arrived yet? Or is it still late?
What?
Has it arrived yet, or is it still late?
No, it's still late. So what I did is I Googled all kinds of news stories saying there was basically a lot of people that were... It took me to a place eventually to Social Security. I'm on the page because I want to quote something to you that's really interesting. And your greeter thought this was interesting because he didn't hear of it. But I found a calendar, just so you know, that said certain dates have changed, that Ludnick had changed. I did not know this, but I don't know if I believe it. Mm-hmm. It's based on your birth date, but it didn't. And the vets, they have a different date than people who are, the older people that are not.
So you're saying something has changed the Social Security disability insurance with regard to the dates that you get paid. That's fascinating.
Right, and also wondering if I'm going to get paid.
Yeah. Beth, if you don't get paid, or if you find out anything more about it, call us back and let us know. But I would suggest that you call your member of Congress right now, and because they've got people whose only job is to participate with people like you, constituents. So give them a shout. Gus in Woodstock, New York. Hey, Gus, what's on your mind today?
Well, I'm 83 years old, and I performed as a musician for 7 decades, all around the world. So I've been in different countries, and I I've been in countries that had dictatorship, so I know the vibe. So I have something that's really was a very heavy question or observation. So it was difficult even to embrace the thought. But it's like, what happens when the commander-in-chief commands the U.S. Army to turn on its own people?
Yeah.
Like grandparents, mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. And what do we do then?
Right. Trump tried that, during his first term as president, and General Milley refused the order, essentially.
Right. And it's like, okay, but it's what dictators do, always do, all around the world, and manifesting that right now. So if you don't go deep, really deep, to find an answer, even if it's like totally negative or the vibe really disturbs you, you have to go there if you're going to find any truth whatsoever. That's really all I had to say.
I get it. Well, you said it well, Gus. Thank you very much for the call, and thanks for listening to 104.1 there in Woodstock. It is 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, speaking the truths to multinational corporations and Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the whole gang we'd really rather you didn't know all about. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Are we going to have more songs like For Dead in Ohio made? I don't know. I hope not. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Gar, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
How you doing there, Tom?
Good. What's up?
I want to speak on tariffs.
Tariffs? Okay.
Tariffs. Okay. I think it's a minute late and a dollar short because I'm originally from Ohio, and if you remember, you're from Michigan, and if you remember, the highest paid area in the country was the Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, in that area. That was the highest paid area
the manufacturing jobs,
Right. And when I got out of high school, our saying was, bring the job to me.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the 70s. And all of a sudden, all the jobs left. I mean, they moved to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they even took the pensions. Like my dad, he worked in the mill and the steel mill. I worked in the steel mill, and they took the pensions and everything.
Yep.
And the point that I'm trying to make is, guess what they replaced it with in my hometown? They replaced it with a federal courthouse, a local jail, and a state prison.
Wow.
That's what they replaced it with. So this has been going on for a long time. Trump is just a pawn in the game. Have you ever read that book, Pawn in the Game?
I have not.
William Guy?
No.
You need to read that one, Pawns in the Game. And that's all he is. He's just a pawn in the game, and his tariffs is a minute late and a dollar short. And we got good pensions. We had pensions. We had health care. When my first daughter was born, you didn't even see a hospital bill. And they shipped it all overseas.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he said we want to save our industries.
Yeah, no, I've been saying for 20 years on this program that we need to restore tariffs to bring manufacturing back home. You've got countries that have much lower wages than we do. You need to balance that. And you've got countries that have much lower environmental standards than we do, and you need to balance that. And the easiest way to do that is with tariffs. And that's what we did prior to the 70s, or really prior to the 80s. I mean, it was Reagan who did the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, George Herbert Walker Bush, who finalized that and negotiated the NAFTA treaty, and then Bill Clinton who signed the NAFTA treaty. And that period of time was when we just, we lost something close to 30 million jobs. There's different numbers floating around there, but I think that's probably a reasonable. 50,000 factories left America or closed.
Yes, and the clothing factories, they all moved to Bangladesh.
Yeah, and absolutely right. But the way to do it is to have Congress impose the tariffs and to do it in a very targeted and incremental fashion rather than have the president run around like, he's Doc Holliday taking out the bad guys, or because he's looking more like, Remember Sam, the cartoon character who used to chase flies around with a shotgun? What was this? Yosemite Sam, good old Yosemite Sam, yeah. With his giant mustache. I mean, that's Donald Trump with tariffs right now. He's running around with a shotgun, just blowing holes in walls and windows, and it's not going to do any good. I get it that he put some tariffs on in his first term, and Joe Biden actually kept them, and Joe Biden actually added tariffs. Biden increased the number of tariffs, but he did it right. He did it carefully, he did it thoughtfully, and he did it with Congress's oversight. Trump is just He's Yosemite Sam. I don't know what to say beyond that. Garth, thanks for the call. Spot on. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
There's a boy on the border, crying in the cold. A mother holds her daughter, her hands tired and old. The promise of a nation carved deep in stone feels like it's cracking, like we're losing our home. The soul of America is breaking apart. We're losing the thread that once tied every heart.
Welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, Norma, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Thanks for picking me up.
Sure.
Earlier, you had a woman talking about grabbing the mask on an ICE officer and taking a picture of his face.
Mm-hmm. Not a good idea.
I don't know if it actually applies to them or not, but if you touch a police officer, a deputy sheriff, a state trooper, or any other law enforcement officer, it is a felony assault.
That's correct.
And so somebody needs to check and see, do ICE people...
Yes,
are they
qualify in
police?
that. Yes, they are. They qualify, and if you try to grab the mask off an ICE officer, A, you will find yourself on the ground. B, you will be charged with assault on an officer. So don't do that.
Yeah. So
good point.
yes, I wanted to make sure people understood that. But the reason I called was that what Trump is doing is taking the power away from Congress.
Mm-hmm.
He does not have. I know he has this emergency thing going, and he thinks he can destroy different departments. But actually, everything that he and Musk have done is illegal, and it's going to be a mess fixing it. And I don't know what is wrong with the Republican Congress, that they are continuing just to sit there with their mouth shut
They're just scared to death of
do nothing.
Billionaires funding primary challenges. It's that simple. They see what happened to Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger.
I know. And it just, they need to understand that he can just go ahead and lock the Capitol and their jobs are gone. And then their billionaire backers don't matter at all, do they?
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know what it's going to take to wake these people up. But, yeah, they should have, I hope they paid attention to Wisconsin last night.
Yeah.
But
well, I think that was the big wake-up
MAGA
for them.
people don't understand that once you destroy every service that our tax dollars created and we have nothing left to fall back on, yeah, I've been telling people to plant a garden, you know.
Yeah. Well, they just gutted our health agencies, the FDA, the NIH, they just had the CDC, they just gutted all three of them yesterday. It was a bloodbath of workers, including the guy who just made a major breakthrough in the treatment of Parkinson's. Him and his research are out on their keister.
Yes, and I think my sister's being diagnosed with it now.
Ouch.
But it just, and people who were in there for experimental treatment for cancer. You know, there's a lot of money in cancer treatment. There's a lot of money in health care. Not just the going to the doctor, but medical equipment, medical supply. These people are now going to be, you know, nobody's going to be able to afford insurance. Right to work is still out there, Tom.
Yeah.
If they decide to bring a factory back and they say, oh, well, you can work for 50 cents an hour with no benefits, are these MAGA people going to stream in there and take those jobs?
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical, Norma.
Yeah. How long is it going to take to get a factory up and running? Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why if you're going to use tariffs as a way of bringing factories back, you need to run it through Congress. You know,
I know.
No business
But
person
instead,
is going to make a decision based on the whim of the emperor.
Tell me something. How much is the land under the AID building worth? How much is the land under the Peace Building worth?
Yeah.
How much is the land under the Smithsonian worth?
Yeah, hundreds of millions.
He's a realtor, you know, he's a real estate guy.
Yeah.
So how much of this is he going to sell, and who's he going to sell it to?
Well, that's a good question. It looks like Musk might be trying to get the U.S. Institute of Peace Building, which is worth $500 million, for himself, you know, for him and his Doge boys. At least that's the rumor. I mean, I just don't know. We will find out, but...
well, you know, he can remodel the Capitol into a palace for himself. It has a nice dome like Russia has.
There you go. There you go. Norma, thanks for the call. It's always nice hearing from you. I appreciate it. Good talking to you. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow. See you then.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!